of Monroe. Welcome everyone. This is the July 11th, 2019 Town of Monroe Planning Board Workshop meeting. Since Noreen is not here, we just start, well, we start with you, Anthony.
Okay.
Just say you're here and your
Anthony
name.
Carroll's here.
Bonnie Franson here.
Jim McKnight here.
Jeff Manson here.
Lisa McQuaid here.
So we have 5 members, which is good. We have a quorum so we can conduct business. Fire exits, there are 2 in front of me. One is the main entry where people have entered from. Another is back by the kitchen. And then there's a third over here on my left-hand side. With that, let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yes, she is. All right, so the first item on the agenda, it's a new project, although it's been in front of us. The application has changed. It is J6 Construction, if you'd come on up. Good evening. And if you could state your names for the record?
Tom DePue Engineering.
And John Sorrentino with J6 Construction.
Thank you. Why don't you give us an overview of the application?
Okay, basically this was the old Hillside and Scott application. What we've decided to do is just go back and build on the 3 lots that exist as on 3 lots. However, due to the configuration, we'd like to do a lot line change on a couple of them, just make the lots more of equal size, and we'll do a better layout for housing and give more green space around the houses themselves.
All right. Has everybody had a chance to look at the proposed layout?
No.
You're just looking at it now?
Just a bit.
In the meantime, Mark, have you had an opportunity to review the layout?
I have. I think this initial.
Why don't you proceed with those?
One item which was on the prior plan that should be carried over to this submittal is the information regarding the utility services, so that we don't have to rely on the old plan. So to have all that can be included, utilities, and any approval should be probably in a submittal letter, just acknowledge all the current standing.
Okay, so what do you want, the sewer layout that was?
Yeah, I mean, I have no issue if the sewer layout continues to be valid.
Right.
We should at least show it on this plan,
Okay, all right.
so that we don't have to rely upon the application that was withdrawn.
Okay, all
I'm
right.
not saying that there's anything wrong, just that I want to have this application or this revised approach stand on its own.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
You're going to have to do an as-built survey, so he's going to show all tie-ins instead.
But the proposed should be on this
Yeah,
subdivision.
so basically, we're gonna show the sewer running up Scott Street, and then it will service the 3 lots.
Okay.
If any easements are required,
Yeah, we show, we're gonna need an easement running between C and B to get to A.
so that easement should be depicted such that it can be properly created.
Okay, yeah, we show that on the drawing.
The usual approval box with the project number on the lower right-hand corner.
Okay,
Looking at the code and subject to Ashley's verification, I believe that there is an accelerated process for a lot line change under A65-5B of the code. So that might outline the steps that are needed, so that we can move forward on that basis.
So it's A65, oh, sorry, Eric.
A65,
What?
5,
yeah, I'm gonna need to write that down.
8.
So I'll just put this in front of us. 5. So the regulations state classification. At the next regular meeting of the planning board, the sketch plan shall be classified as a major subdivision or a minor subdivision. A lot line change may be approved by the planning board upon submission of a survey prepared by a surveyor licensed by the state of New York indicating the proposed change in the lot line, the topography to the property to which the resulting land area is to be added or deleted, and a notation that the area of land created by the boundary change is to become a part of an adjacent lot. Where the planning board believes that additional information is required, the board or its designated representative may request such information prior to the planning board making a decision. So this is suggesting that this doesn't require a hearing or anything of that nature?
Yes, it's not a subdivision, it doesn't require a public
Can
hearing.
you speak into your microphone, please?
It's not a subdivision and doesn't require a public hearing.
Okay.
That turns it off.
Does this require GML, but since
Yes,
we're on the
it does.
boundary? Okay, so we still need to send that off to Orange County, which Noreen will do. Are we showing the topography? Do we need to show the topography?
You know, that, obviously, there's a reference to it in the code. Clearly, there's plenty of information available. Tom could as easily drop the topography on the plan, so it will be in compliance with the
Okay.
spirit of the law. So if you drop on the topography, you drop on an easement, show the utilities, it would be my opinion that the plan is complete as required by the code.
Okay.
Now, we show no houses on the lots. I mean, that would be a plot plan. I'll show where the sewers are, but I guess I could put a proposed house on it, if that would help everybody.
That would be if you know where the houses are going, it would be a benefit to show, as we normally course do.
Yeah, that's a setback area, but I'm not showing the house, I'm just showing the setback
What
area.
are you showing where the house can go?
Yeah, that shows where the house is gonna go, but we're not
Yeah.
really showing any.
We have, and I have to check the zoning, we have these house relocation notes where the desire is to indicate how many bedrooms will be part of the dwelling, where it's going to be located, the house site, and you can move it within a certain distances.
The distance, the setbacks are on there in that dotted envelope.
Yeah, but this actually is to locate a house.
Actual house.
So take a look at the house relocation notes. Frankly, we have to see if they apply to a lot line change, but it was really intended that where you say the house is going to go, it's going to be approximately there.
Okay.
For C, sure.
Just for help, that's section 5721.8, letter C.
And for lot line changes now, as per the seeker amendments, this is now a type 2 action?
Yes.
So there is no seeker. So I think at this point, from my perspective, you've created 3 complying lots, correct?
Yeah.
There were variances, I believe, for the prior subdivision, but they're of no effect at this point. Would that be correct?
There is a 280A variance that's noted on the
On
plan
each lot.
Yeah,
on these lots.
Oh, because of the fact they're private.
This is a private road.
road, and that was,
So that would then apply to,
Okay.
Would they have to amend that variance?
No, they're for the existing lot.
or the existing lots. The variance itself actually calls out the tax lots that exist today.
so they would just be bound by the terms of that variance.
Okay. In terms of then the lot line adjustment, would we expect for the lots that are involved in a lot line change, a new deed description? Just to review, should you get a deed description of the meets and bounds?
I believe they'll have to file those when they file the lot line change plan.
Okay,
My biggest concern is that they properly depict the easements that are needed
okay,
as well, so we don't have that get lost prior to the sale of any of the lots.
okay.
Yeah, I have a 20-foot wide sewer easement that's gonna run up between B and C. That's the only real easement I need. And as far as doing deed descriptions, I don't think you need a deed description until you sell the lots, because don't you own all 3 lots?
Yeah.
So it was originally under one deed, so I don't think you gotta do an actual transfer parcel for each one of the things, because it's still the same owner. I'll go over that with tax map though, see
Yeah.
if
Yeah, I
that's,
believe all the county would require is the map at
okay,
this point.
Okay,
all right. But I'll go over that with tax map. They're the ones that usually question whether we need to do a transfer parcel, description or not, so.
And I know this is obviously not the intent, but I just want either as a map note or language that, this area that's being transferred isn't the developable area. It's part of what's being transferred from one lot to another in some way. Does anybody have comments or questions, or, I think this is pretty straightforward. And as a result of the changes, this is not any increase in the lots. It doesn't warrant any improvements or anything, modifications as far as the roads. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, relying on the creation of the 3 prior lots, this creates no increased intensity.
Okay.
So I wouldn't see that we have any basis to ask for any additional improvements.
Okay. So, if everybody agrees, I would recommend that, I don't know when Orange County meets. So obviously we want to get the GML, before we take action. But I would recommend that we have, Ashley put together a resolution for us of approval for this lot line change. And that we put you on, the next available agenda after we receive, the letter from the county, because we can't take action until we have that letter. So as soon as we have it in hand, we can add you to, the next regular agenda if that's what I would recommend.
No, that was on the previous
Yeah.
subdivision, but now they have to submit this drawing to the county plan.
And what triggers it is you're within 500 feet of another municipal boundary. So it's just a trigger.
So you can just send a copy of this drawing that we have right here to the county. That should be good enough for them to...
How long would it take you to make any adjustments?
Probably 3-4 days.
Noreen isn't even here, so it's not going to get sent. So I would just suggest make the changes, send them in, and then she'll send them up.
Okay. So let me just go over, we're going to show topography. We'll actually show the house locations, and then we'll show the sewer utility coming into the lots.
An easement.
The easements.
Yeah, okay, all right.
In terms of driveways, curb cuts, that would just be done at the time of building permit?
Yeah, and it's not even something that has to be reviewed by the highway super because they're private roads.
Okay. So he doesn't get involved at all?
No.
Okay.
And as far as the depicting of the house, leave yourself,
Yeah, we're going to basically go in the middle of the...
leave yourself enough room so that whatever style house you may alter it into as part of your building permit process, you can stay in the reserved area for the house.
Yeah. The building inspector will look at it, and he'll expect you to be within certain bounds. So, yeah, again, look at those house relocation notes because they need to get added to the plan, I believe. And anything else?
This may have already been reviewed, and it doesn't pertain to this, but I'm just wondering if if you're going to meet the sanitary sewer depths and you have enough elevation to run that sewer.
Yeah, without the topo, there's plenty of drop across the lot and all the way down to the manhole, so there's no problem with that.
That was on the prior submittal as far as all the sewer lines on the prior submittal, which is part of the reason why want them on this.
Well,
And then you
yeah.
put the lowest sewerable elevations on the building locations.
Well, the other thing I'm thinking, it's good to have the sewer easement shown, but who knows what the depth of rock is and what it would require to install a sewer line there, so just want to make sure it works.
Okay.
And you
Yeah, we'll
get
put
first floor service.
we have the manhole layout, we'll put the inverts on and everything, so there's no question about it.
So I think really then the next meeting will happen after we receive our GML review, and we'll have a resolution in front of us, and we can take action.
You were looking for a map note that says something about developable land?
Well, I've seen some maps when you have a lot line change, so that it doesn't become this area that doesn't end up on a lot, because the lot line somehow isn't effectuated, that you end up almost with like a non-complying lot. So just to say this area is being transferred and is not developable, it's going to become part of I don't know, maybe Ashley can help us on language.
What's the, I'm confused as to the,
Well, I think what you're going after is if you look at the existing lot configuration on the
Right.
left side of the bottom,
Right,
I think it would help, Tom, if you, on the actual lot line plan, show lot line to be deleted,
yeah,
new lot line, just so that it's clear that there's no
Yeah, there's not
hanging
stuff
pieces of
that's left
parcel
over
that don't
that-
end up somewhere,
exactly.
which become then a tax sale and a nightmare for the town.
Right, and then you have like a
You're right.
20 by 100 strip and someone wants to put a house on
I've
it.
been there.
Doesn't know what to do with
and I
it. So,
think you do have the lines there, right?
Yeah, just gotta label them.
Right.
yeah, we show a hook on them, I think, but we'll make sure that they're
You could actually eliminate the hook and just say lot line to be deleted,
deleted, okay,
and then you're showing your new lot lines.
yeah.
I mean, the key plans on the bottom are very helpful.
Yes, I agree.
All right, okay,
All right,
yep, all right, thank you very much.
thank you.
Thanks.
So the next item on the agenda is 81 Raywood Drive subdivision. Good evening. Good evening. If you just state your names for the record.
Larry Toro, Civil Tech Engineering.
Joel Mann, Brachaman Associates.
Thank you. Why don't you give us an overview of what's being proposed?
What we have is a 1.2 acre parcel off of Raywood Drive. And what we're proposing is a 3-lot subdivision. 2 lots are flag lot shaped, and the third one has the full frontage of required. Fairly straightforward. We're proposing a duplex on each of the lots that will be serviced by municipal sewer and water, which we don't presently show the connections right now. We just want to start getting some initial feedback from the board on the concept.
So, Ashley and Mark, have you had a chance to take a look at this application?
I have.
Okay. So why don't we start with Mark?
The bulk table on the plan, as far as the required information, is correct for the SR10 for single family. I'm a little confused as to what exactly is being proposed. I know that duplexes are proposed. Looking at the plan, it's not clear to me if it's 2 residential units on each lot or 2 duplexes, meaning 4. Either way, duplexes and multifamily are not allowed in the SR10 zone. So that's one significant problem. The other issue relative to the lot configuration, if you go back to even single family, the lot width calculation under 57.3 calls for the lot width to be measured as an average or a mean dimension of the measurements at the front and rear. So the lot width dimension would need to be corrected, and you would have to show us that each of the lots meet the lot bulk requirements. The balance of the criteria appear to be satisfied, but lot width, you'd have to verify that that meets the requirements. If it does, then the board could consider it as a 3-lot, single-family subdivision. Other than that, I don't know that the board could do anything other than send it to the zoning board of appeals. I may be wrong procedurally, but I'll toss it off to Ashley.
Sure, so I do agree that in this district, only single-family detached homes are allowed, unless it is part of a cluster subdivision, which this is not. Another issue as far as the flat-shaped lot, it's called a rear dwelling under your code, and that's not permitted as well. You can't have a dwelling that's situated behind another dwelling. And there may also be an issue with the parking being in the front yard setback as proposed currently. And also as far as the owner's endorsement, that would need to be filled out by the corporation, by the person that's signing, indicating their title that it's signing on behalf of the corporation. It would be an unlisted action under seeker, and it would require referral to the county, and the 239 double N notices would have to go around the village of Tazewell and to the town of Palm Tree. But I think the biggest issue, of course, is the houses that are being proposed and getting those to comply with the code.
So, do you want to discuss what's being proposed?
Yeah.
The fact that these are duplexes, they're not allowed in the SR10, et cetera?
Okay, basically, this is there's a good point for Mark. It's not each one is a duplex. It's basically just 2 units on each lot, and the intent was actually to go for yes, we need I think a referral from your board to go to the ZBA
For a use variance?
For a use variance for the duplex unit. Is that a use variance, or it's not a multifamily? It's still a 2 unit. Is that a use variance or a area variance?
It would be a use
It would
variance.
be a use
because
variance. Okay.
It's a 2-family, in essence. Well,
Okay.
or is it semi-attached? We have to look at the definitions.
Yeah, that would really depend on the building inspector and the zoning board as to what type of variance is required, but it's clear that the variance would be required.
Right. I mean, I guess, and again, it is up to the building inspector, but what is allowed is a single-family detached dwelling.
Yeah.
What's not being proposed is a single-family detached
Correct.
dwelling. So I think anything else may end up being a use variance.
Okay.
And then it appears there'd be an area variance for the lot width. I'm sorry, an area variance for the lot width, the 50 feet.
That's I'm not sure exactly, because I know that flag lots is not prohibited in the SR10 zoning districts. So
So the prohibited uses include dwellings that are to the rear of other dwellings.
yeah, but
For whatever reason, they're not called out as flag lots. I'd have to go back to the history of why it was written that way. Essentially, the lot width is 75 feet, and you're showing that 2 of the lots, the lot width is 50 feet.
that's basically the configuration of a flag lot. You need to have 50 feet wide at the beginning, but later on where the building is, you have the full width of the lot.
But I think it depends on where the lot width has to be measured from.
Lot width is measured as the average value for setback from the front and rear yards. So, quick calculation appears that they're in the 72, 73 range, if the numbers are correct, so they're still short of the 75.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
not significantly, it's not like the 50 that they're showing, but still doesn't comply.
Yeah, unless I can narrow the center lot, the front lot, the 92, and that might bring us up to that I can have the actual number. And the other thing is when I narrow the center lot, then basically the building lot 3 and lot 2 are not rear of another building, because it's actually, when you look on the configuration, you have the lot 2 stands basically between lot 1 and lot 3. It's covering maybe a little bit of the building, but I'm not sure if that's being considered as a rear of the building, as a rear building. Whatever.
What is the rear yard setback for lot 2?
35 feet, just missing the dimensional line.
It's 85 feet?
35.
Oh, 35.
Yeah.
So if you bring, to meet the width requirement, if you're going to bring that lot line forward, then you may end up having a side yard issue. But then I guess you could pull the houses farther up.
Which one? If I bring the...
So if you need to meet the lot width requirement for lots 1 and 3,
Yeah.
that would mean you'd have to pull that rear lot line from lot 2. You would have to pull it forward, correct?
No.
side yard.
The
Towards
side.
the-
I will take the 2 side yards. Basically, I will make the 92, basically, let's say, for 80 feet. And so I can have the 50 feet will become 55 or 56. and I can narrow the proposed building on lot 2, and we'll just narrow the building too.
Okay. Well, we'll have to see what it looks like,
Okay, I understand.
right?
So this is something probably needs to be clarified before you can refer me to the ZBA, so we'll know what type of variances we need.
Right, and I think we also, in this instance, this is you're calling them duplex units, but again, it's only 3 lots. So this is a minor subdivision, I believe procedurally.
Yes.
And then, so we have to look at the cluster regulations, whether we can waive the cluster subdivision regulations for a minor subdivision.
Yeah, I don't want to go in that direction, actually.
And so what is the parcel like itself? Because what isn't shown here is, I would want to still see topography. There's additional information that we need to see in terms of whether this, if we're going to make any kind of recommendation
Okay.
to the ZBA, we need to know what we're dealing with in terms of grading, et cetera, and what's on
It's
the lot
basically, it's
itself.
not so bad. The lot is dropping down, going down to the back. The back is the lower side. Just the surrounding areas. On the right side, you have there's a school lot, and there is, I think, there is a water tower, just not too close to the property, but in that
So if you look at it, it's this property right in here?
is this property right in there. So you
Okay.
see the whole white on the right side. That's where the water tower is.
Over
like the
here?
cleared area, yes.
Okay, so I
And
don't
then you
know if
have
this will show it, but,
Yeah. Before the pound.
so what kind of units are back
Okay,
here?
there's multifamily dwellings.
How many units per dwelling?
I would say 6 in a building or 8, 6 to 8 in a building. Then there is proposed on the next lot, just this lot where you're hearing now with
This one here.
This one here has become part of the village of KJ and town of Palm Tree, and there is a proposed development from a total of 46 units on that lot, multifamily project.
Is this lot also in?
No, only this one.
Only this one here?
Yep.
I don't know if these are reflected yet on tax maps or on real property.
I'm not sure. I think there is, yes. They have it updated. The town of Palm Tree is updated already.
So it's saying school district, here is Joel. Bond and sewer, it's not really saying what jurisdiction it's in.
But you can see on the text,
Oh,
review
do you
text
see it?
map.
Oh, sorry, I see it, Municipality of Palm Tree.
Yeah.
Got it, thank you.
This is now, I think this is now on the minute, it's just town of Palm Tree, not village of KJ. This is part of the 56 acre, what was just part of the town of Palm Tree, not in the annexation.
So it's
to
in the
beginning.
unincorporated area?
Yeah, but it's going to happen probably soon or was already done, but
Okay, so here, I don't know if we can get any kind of topo on this.
Is that the lot we're talking about?
So,
The highlighted one?
is it generally going down or uphill? Looks like maybe uphill?
it goes down.
Oh, it is
Yeah.
going downhill?
Yeah.
Okay, so then here's where that little pond is?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. So, board members, comments?
That's a lengthy driveway distance in the right-of-way. Are there any concerns over that? Was that reviewed, Mark?
The multiple curb cuts?
Yeah, and then you have the one where I guess there's a future right-of-way for the last lot, to lot 3, from the curb line on Raywood Drive to the actual property line.
I see the long driveways, I see the,
On lot 3, if you look at the property line intersection with where the right-of-way line
oh,
is.
you're saying long driveway within the right-of-way?
Yeah.
This hasn't gone to the highway super yet. When I looked at it, and because it didn't meet zoning, I really didn't drill down too much more. But my first concern was for snow removal and snow maintenance. A lot of times the highway supers are concerned that all the storage space or usable space in the cul-de-sac is not tied up with driveways. So I'm sure he's gonna wanna look at this and make sure there's some available space on as you're coming in on the right side of the cul-de-sac. But I haven't even touched base with him on this at all yet.
Is this road in the town of Monroe still, or is this in town of Palm Tree?
No,
Rainwood's in
the road
Monroe.
is in town of Monroe, and the proposed configuration for so your question is basically the next development, how this is going to work. It's basically there's proposed an entrance from the other side.
For this one?
For this one, there is if you go in the back of the property, all the way
Okay.
to the corner.
Over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
over
gonna
there.
ask how
Yeah,
you did,
yeah,
because I don't
yeah.
recall this coming in front of
Yep.
us. Okay,
Just,
You will get it probably under 239, and so.
okay. So this one is in Palm Tree, but this one is not, and this one is not.
Correct.
That's odd. Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, it certainly is.
So basically this path, you're right.
On your issue of prohibited construction with a dwelling behind another dwelling, if you want to look at that wording, it's on 5737. And it does allow it in the cases of clusters. And
Right.
obviously, this is not one,
Right.
so.
What is this the cemetery back in here?
Yep.
And is this what's happening on this property?
There's only this property. Which one?
This here? I don't know if you
Okay,
can see
this
it.
is a cemetery, part of the cemetery.
So
This is
all-
old. The Google Maps, it's probably the picture
It is old?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's this.
It's all
is-
this,
Yeah, everything now
piles.
settled.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is just a house?
There's one single family house, and next to it is a community room. Just,
That way?
yes, just next to the single family house.
Might not be shown here.
It's not showing yet, but you can see it. It's right off the cul-de-sac, between the cul-de-sac and the cemetery.
Okay. Are you going to have any sidewalks or anything connecting into any of these other sidewalks?
I believe that I will connect that to the next property, to the sidewalk of the next property where the development is proposed, yes.
What's happening here?
And they will have a sidewalk in to the village.
Okay, so they're going to have a sidewalk coming in this way?
Correct, yep.
Okay. So I think we need to see more information as far as what's supposed to be provided on the subdivision plan. Certainly topography and some grading. And I wanted to take a look at, I don't know if you have already looked at, Ashley, the cluster subdivision regulations?
So it's under 5 acres, you can waive the cluster.
The provisions. We don't have to, but we can.
Yes.
Okay. And then, so your entire parcel is less than 5 acres,
Yes.
right? 1.1945. So, I would just advise that you're gonna have, what's the water and sewer situation?
Going to be municipal water and sewer.
Basically, on the right side of this property, there's a sewer main and a water main, just on this side and running in the back of the property. So we're tied in from all. So we don't need any water main extension, any sewer main extension in order to get sewer. So the sewer will be Orange County Sewer District number 1, or will be Village of Kiryat Joel. Already spoke to them that they are ready, willing to sell water for this property.
To do that, if the water is coming from the village of Kiryas Joel, but the property is in the town of Monroe, what has to happen?
I don't know if it's just an outside user agreement or authorization.
So we'll
So you will
need,
need an agreement between
Yeah.
this property owner and the village.
yeah, and I think we want evidence or a letter that you can obtain water.
Okay.
I think that's what we did with Sherry Tora and perhaps, or some others. I know we needed, I thought it was for Sherry Tora letters.
I will show on the property the easements in the next, on the next submission will show the easements, so
Okay,
it's very easy, it's very simple.
all right. Anybody have at this time any comments? Hmm?
Larry, if you can make it absolutely clear, the number of units proposed on each lot.
And I think you're really going to need to visit the building inspector to determine, once you get that resubmission in, we can give it to the building inspector so he can take a look at it, and then, we'll have our attorney work with Ben to identify all the variances that may be required, whether they're use and/or area variances.
Okay.
So, my recommendation would be to come back to another workshop meeting. Would that make sense?
The next workshop
Yeah.
meeting, yeah.
Yep.
When is the next submission date?
We don't have Noreen here,
Oh, okay.
so I cannot.
Whatever, we'll look it up and we'll try to be on the next workshop meeting.
Yeah, I think she's only out this week, so if you want to try
Yeah,
giving her a
she's back
call.
on the 15th.
15th, so give her a call when she comes back.
Okay.
Looks like our next workshop is August 8th.
Is on the
August 8th.
August 8th,
Mhm.
So
Okay.
I don't know
at least a couple of weeks in before
when
that.
the submission date is.
It's been, I
required.
think it's,
We had a,
Weeks or so.
yeah, it's probably in the next.
there was a table
here's
of
the
dates.
table.
Next submission date is July 25th.
Okay.
Okay, it's still doable.
Yep.
Just a quick question for the applicant. What is your intent with regard to the decks? Are they open decks?
That's open wood decks, yes.
Yeah, because just to confirm with you that
It's not patios on the ground, it's basically wooden decks.
if there's any cover over the deck, then you would need a variance for that as well.
There is no cover on it, just like there is like the plastic temporary being rolled up and down. I don't think that's being considered as,
Over top?
yeah.
You may need to talk to Ben on that as well, because if there's any, if it says it has to be unroofed.
It is unroofed.
Ben to determine what unroofed
Okay.
means. I don't know if it says temporary or not temporary, but that's up to the code enforcement officer.
So my other question is for the planning board, is there going to be ARB review? For other than a single-family dwelling, so for any site plan, special use permit, or subdivision application subject to planning board review and approval, other than for a single-family detached dwelling or accessory use thereto. So, I believe we have ARB authority over this since they're proposing duplexes.
Yes, it seems to.
So we're going to expect to see elevations and
Okay.
make sure also in the subdivision we have house relocation notes. As far as the cluster subdivision, I think we'll take a look and see what you submit next and determine whether
But
we waive it or don't waive it.
right, but I don't think that you need that for the next workshop meeting, the ARB requirements, because we need to know which direction we are going.
Oh, I agree.
So,
But if you have anything
I think they probably would want to go for the variance too.
Correct.
before.
Yep.
going down.
we'll try to give you enough information so you can refer us to the ZBA and we'll see which direction this is going.
So when you do the house relocation notes, just note how many bedrooms, whatever is required to be submitted.
Okay.
Do you have elevations yet for the duplexes or not yet? Or are you just really showing boxes at this time?
Well, we can determine if we will have some grading, we can do some elevations. Yeah, I think we can make a decision on that.
And any floor plans or no, not at this
No,
time?
no floor plans.
Okay,
No.
so this is just theoretical right
Just
now?
correct.
Okay. All right. Okay. Do you have any questions?
Not yet.
All right. So I don't think we're going to take any actions right now. We'll hold off on seeker and notice of intent or any of that until we get something that's a little bit more refined.
Yeah, I
All
think
right.
you basically ask all my questions, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
You too.
So the next item on the agenda is DG Management.
This is, is this the Rico Terrace, yeah. Poor David ends up last
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Name
John
for the record.
Queenan from Lankin Tully, engineer for the applicant.
Thank you. So I believe that since we last met, you submitted another cluster plan, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but no other conventional plans?
No other conventional plan. I did send an email to Noreen for distribution to the board with regards to the cluster plan and the applicant's stance on what we believed.
It was your cover letter?
No, it was an email, separate email. I sent it to Noreen. I had copied your
okay.
email. And Noreen said that she was going to distribute it to the board, basically explaining the applicant's stance on the conventional layout plan based upon some information that we did receive from the highway superintendent regarding the cul-de-sac length.
So, I think, Mark, you may have spoken to the highway superintendent. I haven't heard any direct communication from him, so.
No, I met with him on June 17th in person, went over the plan, discussed the issues related to cul-de-sac lengths, both in the case of his position as highway superintendent, and then with a benefit of his familiarity as chief of the fire department, which was kind of a dual consultation. I issued a memo to the planning board chairperson on June 18th, which indicated that Mr. Cherney had no real concern with regard to the length of the cul-de-sac as long as the road was built to full width as required by the code, and that it met town road specifications, and that at the end of the road there was a full diameter cul-de-sac, or in lieu of that, a turnaround that meets the, I guess it's Appendix D of the New York State Code. So, from a practical standpoint, what he's concerned about is being able to get in, have access, have room to turn around, and he wasn't particularly concerned about the length once he was in the cul-de-sac as a function of maintenance. He was concerned about the three-family houses and fire protection. He had no real objection to the duplexes considered as part of the cluster, but he was concerned about the three families. I think from the standpoint of snow removal and not fire protection, the cul-de-sac is a better layout because the truck can go in and plow through the full diameter cul-de-sac and not worry about backing up, which is very common in the fire service, but then you have more people with you to provide the safety protection for backing up. So I think the cul-de-sac is a better layout, and the length of the cul-de-sac is, I don't believe, an issue.
When you say when you say the cul-de-sac is a better layout, that's as opposed to like a T-turn?
Like a T-turnaround.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously, from a fire standpoint, the T works. From a highway superintendent, road maintenance, plowing standpoint, the cul-de-sac is much better. So I think the cul-de-sac is the preference of Mr. Cherney from a highway superintendent standpoint.
Okay. And he's speaking really to the one cul-de-sac, or just having a cul-de-sac that's longer than 500 feet?
Yes,
Because
correct.
there's in reality two cul-de-sacs on this. It's like a dog bone.
Well, I think from a conventional standpoint, they're showing the dog bone, as it may be called.
Right.
But from a proposed subdivision, I don't believe there's another, the cluster plan, I
Oh,
don't
from
believe
the
has.
cluster plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he had the benefit of looking at both.
Okay.
Obviously, for something that was proposed for dedication, he wouldn't want to have the second cul-de-sac.
Okay.
From the standpoint of approval, he had no problem with the single cul-de-sac with the longer length.
So, I think that's a good segue into, right now, what we really have to come up with is what the yield, the maximum yield is going to be. And that's really the maximum, because ultimately you also have to meet the cluster subdivision regulations, so, with regard to open space, minimums, et cetera. So I think we really need to, rather than getting into the details of the cluster plan you submitted, really figure out what your potential maximum yield is. So with that, I think we're still looking at the plans that are from like March 27th, 2019. It's the one with the two cul-de-sacs. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Should be last revised May 16th.
Last revised May 16th?
And it's the one, yes, with the two cul-de-sacs.
This layout.
Yes.
See if I can get it on the... I'm going to see if I have the digital version, but while I'm looking, Ashley, if you could give us some guidance as far as looking at the conventional and how we should approach the conventional in terms of, again, determining the maximum yield.
Sure, so you should be looking at it as if this is the plan before you. This is the subdivision before you that someone's seeking approval for. So all of the considerations you would give to any normal subdivision is is what you should consider here, and whether this is a reasonable layout, something that you could see yourself as a board approve it, given the layout, the configuration, the topography. Is this conventional plan something that is approvable?
So that if we had to pursue the conventional plan, if we had to make a determination on it, would we approve it in that configuration?
It's something, exactly, it's something that you would approve. It's something that you would be comfortable approving as a conventional plan.
Okay. I have April as the last version here. John, maybe you can take a look at it and let me know when it comes up if that's fairly similar to what, maybe it might be easier to. Okay, sorry.
It's basically the same, older version. We did the lot grading and site grading throughout, but generally that's the layout per se.
Okay. So does anyone want to start? Does anybody have comments with regard to what they think would be, in terms of their review of this application, whether all the lots would be approvable, whether the road layout would be approvable?
If I recall correctly, the lot area that we had our question was lot 10, right?
Correct.
All right.
One of the ones.
Yeah, there's maybe a couple. but-
That was the one with the long windy driveway that I think I was the only one who thought that was approvable. Definitely not buildable, but approvable. Whatever that number was, I think it was
You're
16
saying,
lots.
so lot 10,
Yeah,
It's the one that has access
one with-
off of.
the large, the required for grading, et cetera.
Correct. It's this one.
yeah. It required a lot of work, definitely financially difficult, but I think at the end of the day, it's approvable.
I remember entering on, just if we're going to do lot 10, I guess, for a minute, which tells me this might take a little time, but I remember getting almost to where you were and then asking the question, did we consider the financial
That's not
story
within our
behind?
purview, I think.
I was asking if it was part of the purview, because I remember, well, go ahead, I don't know.
Sure, so just because something's more expensive, that doesn't make it not approvable or not appropriate, and that's really not something to consider. There's the other extreme of that. Obviously, if something is going to be, $6 million to put in a driveway, that's something that it gets to a point where that really just isn't practical or reasonable. So it really comes down to reasonableness, and the expense really isn't.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I didn't think it was, and then I thought if you were saying it looks unreasonably expensive, there are some people that will unreasonably spend an amount of money because they particularly want something a certain way, so you could, in the argument that it's buildable, and then there's the argument that no reasonable person would spend $6 million for this driveway, if that's what it would have costed, and we didn't even get to that fact. I was just asking what the criteria were, but
One of the other
thank you for
comments
the
about
answer,
lot 10, and I've run into this in a number of application over the years, where the terrain makes the driveway very difficult. There's no requirement that a house have a garage in the house. We have a lot of developments where the driveway comes in and goes half the distance to the house, has a parking area, and has beautiful stairs leading up to the house, because that's just the way the people want it. And I jokingly repeat, God bless his soul, one of the building inspectors who I sat next to said, there's a lot of houses in the Swiss Alps that don't have driveways up to their house. And that's a choice. It's a personal choice, how you want to build your house. Some people don't want the garage in their house. So is the lot 10 practical? Yeah. Is it more expensive if you want to have a garage in your house? Yeah. So that comes down to the choice of who buys that lot, what they want to build, and what expense they want to undertake.
So I think I'm going to approach this a little differently. Maybe we'll just go look at each lot and then consider the road configuration and then say whether we think it would be an approvable lot or not. Related to this, what I'd really like to know is what are you allowed to do within the Orange and Rockland easement?
Driveway access.
That's
No-
it?
No structures.
No structures. Are you allowed to have yards?
Mhm.
And people, so children can play, you can have equipment, you can have,
I don't know about equipment. They don't allow structures. So there wouldn't be, you couldn't put the house there, you couldn't put
I don't
a
think
shed there, or
like
a
a jungle
swimming
gym.
pool. Correct.
Like a children's jungle gym that you might see at a park. You couldn't
Correct.
put, you know, the little tree house or whatever there.
Okay, so if we start with lot 1,
Hold on, I'd like to back up a little because, you know, we're talking about the essence of reasonableness and the conversation that Mark had with the highway superintendent about the length of the cul-de-sac and also the stub cul-de-sac to the side. And just because geometrically you can do it, and just because the slopes can be cut to fit in, I don't think any of that is reasonable, especially when you're trying to max in the number of lots that are reasonable for that site. So we can go through each lot and see if it's buildable, but that to me does not necessarily meet the test of reasonable, so.
right, and I think, you know, would we approve it because it's reasonable? Would it have been a lot that we would have allowed?
Right.
So I think, you know, and again, Ashley, I don't know if you want to add to that, but that's why we're looking at this from a lot-by-lot basis.
But in addition to that, I do not think that I would be inclined to vote in favor of a waiver to extend the length of the cul-de-sac to meet the purposes of maxing out the subdivision. So I would need to say whatever the maximum cul-de-sac length from the beginning of the intersection at Scunnamunk Road, whatever that takes you to, that's what this subdivision should be designed around.
So just a comment on that, and the waiver is obviously something that this board is able to grant, and this is why I think it's important to try and divorce the cluster from the conventional plan when you're at this stage, because although it's going to determine the maximal yield, it's really, would you grant the waiver for this conventional plan? Just putting aside the cluster and just focusing on this is before you now.
Would you allow?
Would you allow that waiver? Would you grant that waiver? And if not, then why not? The highway superintendent has commented that obviously isn't the end-all and be-all of that, but that is definitely something for you to consider, and whether or not, for this conventional plan, if that's something that you would grant the waiver.
Sure, and I to that extent, and I appreciate the highway superintendent's comment, I don't think that it's necessarily in their, his purview, and I take it into consideration.
I have a comment. We're looking at the old plan, and before us is 11 homes, and the old one, or the one that we have up there, is 16. Are we going to consider this as well? I mean, how does this, the new plan that we have before us, affect our decision-making?
I think that's the cluster.
Yeah, you have the cluster.
Those are buildings, so there may be, if that's the cluster.
And I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're looking at,
Older edition, but it still has the
What I was
60
hearing.
lots.
right, at this time,
If I could just touch upon the length of the cul-de-sac.
sure,
We've gone over it many months now.
Yeah.
In order to get to the property, the shortest path is the path that the applicant secured from Scunnamunk to our beginning of our cul-de-sac, which is 420 feet before we get to the property line. To put a 500-foot cul-de-sac, I can't even fit the cul-de-sac bulb just on our property without granting the waiver, because the cul-de-sac diameter from right-of-way is 100 feet. So I'm still short by 20 feet. So, and no matter what scenario, I'd still need to request a waiver. And granted that what the applicant has gone through to secure that access, which is a better access point from all the other access points that he could potentially have looked at, and what happened in the past with the subdivision basically creating this, this is how we ended up at this layout, which we believe is a unique situation to this property, as it doesn't have a dedicated usable frontage anywhere because of what happened with the prior subdivision map that we went over at the last meeting.
well, I think with the
So-
prior subdivision map, isn't there frontage on Orico?
It's unbuildable for a municipal road.
So, no, but that presumes that you have to put a subdivision here. They could have put one house here. So I don't think because you can't, you know, get a road in here doesn't mean that it's not buildable.
But that is why the board has the ability to grant the waiver, or consider the waiver.
I don't know the full history of this project and when the previous subdivision and neighboring lands were developed, but do you think that the planning board is obligated to grant a certain number of lots to the applicant?
I don't think you're obligated to grant any number of lots to the applicant, but the plan before you is using the ability of the board to have the waiver, which is in the code, and it's in the code for situations like this, unique situations where properties over time have, for whatever reason, have lost their ability to naturally access.
Okay. Well,
I-
thank you.
So my perspective on this is that whoever subdivided this property decided to create one single lot, probably because of all the O and R easement land on it. They did have access, from what I understand, right? We're arguing that they have access out from Scunamunk. They have an easement, correct?
Part of the subdivision in 2004,
Mhm.
yes, they switched that to a 50-foot wide access easement from
Right.
Scunamunk.
So they have the ability to get in there, at least, again, they could build at least a house. And so, you know, to say whether you need to have a road coming in here or to have a cul-de-sac, you know, I could argue that you could put one house here and it's developable. And it's the owner's risk of purchasing this and trying to get a subdivision onto this property, which is more challenging because of its configuration. But we're still arguing what's reasonable. You did get access, you know, to the town of Monroe.
Correct, I just don't, I don't think maybe the owner didn't realize that, or maybe that regulation wasn't in effect at the time, I don't know. But basically, they were leaving 5 acres for one, I don't know, I can't
Right.
speak, I wasn't involved with the
Yeah,
application at the time.
I mean, we could look to see, but ultimately, I think this comes down to what we think is reasonable, how many lots, you know, and have you designed a lot layout. So, you know, although we're going to focus on the lots, the one thing I do want to say is, from my perspective, you know, the question is, the length of the cul-de-sac and the design of it, is it reasonable and does it provide safe access? The issue I have, the more of an issue I have with this layout is that there are 2 cul-de-sacs. And I think that having one cul-de-sac would have been reasonable. I think the 2, to have them, you know, the highway come in, sweep around, then go around and come out to the bulb, I don't, in my mind, think that the cul-de-sac, the one that's closer in, is necessarily reasonable. So that's just my perspective as one member of the board. So I don't know if anyone wants to weigh in on that, but, you know, the reason I was asking about lot 1 starting there is that we did discuss, and Mr. Donnelly, while he was here, indicated that you did have the 50-foot access easement. You could get back into the lot, but once you're into the lot, this particular proposed dwelling is limited essentially to this triangular area as far as what you can build and structures you can put on it, other than the driveway, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, any reaction to that? Anyone think that's approvable, not approvable? Do you think it's still okay to, you know, if that's the configuration of a lot, would that be reasonable?
Question first, I guess, but kind of on it. The roads, I remember Sherney said he was okay with the cul-de-sac if it were wide enough for are these meeting the standards for turning around the roads? And then the second question would be, are the cul-de-sacs wide enough for?
Well, yes, and ultimately, the cluster plan, if you consider one, we would have to make sure that the cluster plan roadway is full width, meaning complying with the current road specifications, and the cul-de-sac is full diameter. So yes, the answer is, they're showing it here, and we need to make sure that if you consider a cluster plan, that we don't lose that benefit.
Now, the highway superintendent did say, related to this, that the one cul-de-sac was reasonable, but when he was looking at the conventional configuration, the 2, you had indicated he couldn't imagine having dedication of both.
No.
Okay. Do you have additional?
I guess while we're on the road stuff, I thought back at lot 1, not that we're going
right
one by one, but do we know the sight lines when you're pulling out onto Scunamunk Road? I don't know if that's exactly the road I was on when we visited this site and pulled out on the Scunamunk, but I remember thinking it didn't have a great view.
We were just maybe 50 to 75 feet north.
Yeah, we weren't here, we were here.
Oh, okay. So I guess I'm not familiar with this sightline, but
Well,
is
it's tight. It just makes 300 feet to the curve.
looking right and left, or?
Looking to your right.
Yeah, and then if you look left, if you're pulling out, trying to make a left turn out of driveway 1 on the
Yes.
Scunnamunk,
Yes.
you can see to your left 300 feet as
Just
well?
about, yeah.
Yeah?
It's-
Okay. I mean, again, the place I pulled out of to the right was fine, and to the left,
Yeah, you get to
Didn't
that,
have
you
a
get
whole
to the
lot.
sharp bend, you see it right just to the south.
so it's better here than it was up where where
It's
we're
actually,
currently.
it's actually a little worse here, because you're getting closer to the bend.
Here.
Oh, it's, you mean it,
Oh, you're talking about on the property that we did the site visit? on.
Correct.
You're
The-
closer to the...
Yes.
yeah, where we pulled out that day is worse than what you're proposing, right?
No,
This-
reversed.
This is worse.
Yes, that's why we didn't want a road here.
Right, but you're showing it
Oh,
for conventional.
So for,
Showing a driveway.
Right, so
Oh,
that's what
right.
I'm asking, so
Yeah.
for really,
But it
so we're
meets, for a
focusing.
driveway, it meets. For a
Right.
road, it wouldn't meet.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. So we're looking at a conventional layout. We're looking at Lot 1. You're proposing a single house there.
Correct.
It has an access easement, even though it's not on the property. Again, Mr. Donnelly already opined that, they have shown that they can get access. I don't know from just a driveway perspective, Mark, would it be an issue from a sight line?
I don't have all that data, but going from what John's telling us, relative to compliance for driveway standards, it meets the standards. I have to, at this point, go with what John is sharing with us.
Okay. Now, does anybody have any opinions on this Lot 1? John has shown the O&R easement, which is this line that's kind of coming across the lot, so therefore it's the area that's really usable, per se, is this area.
Pointer's not showing up.
Maybe, John, you could, right, so that's the O&R line.
Okay.
So the house is located in a triangular area below that. And that's why I'm asking. So from a usability perspective, O&R, they won't allow structures, a yard can go there, but if there were play equipment, anything of that nature, it would have to be in the triangular area.
Yeah, it'd be to the rear of that house.
Okay. Any thoughts? Everybody think that they can still do Lot 1?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
so, and those sight lines, I guess, were met, is what we were saying, right? In the,
Because since it's a driveway.
since it's a driveway, yeah, okay.
Thoughts on Lot 1?
It's fine.
Fine? Okay.
Okay.
We're good with Lot 1.
It sounds like we're good with 1 and 10. The others seem to,
Well, actually, I'm
I don't know.
not.
You have other
I'm not-
issues?
I'm not so good with 10.
oh,
But
right.
let's go lot by lot.
Oh, well, I guess I meant discussion-wise, they were discussed,
Yeah.
as opposed, but, all right, if you want to go lot by lot, or
So now
back to the
we're
double bulb.
on lot 2. I don't have, so I personally don't have an issue with lot 2. I have an issue with the bulb. I don't think we would have approved something that has double bulbs.
Well, I agree with that, so that would call into question Lot 2.
Right.
Could
But
I
if-
ask why? What is the objection to the double bulb?
Well, I think it's in part what Mark had said. It's a combination of you're creating, we don't have this configuration in the town. We don't have roads where the highway superintendent would have to come in.
Because it's
There's-
basically an intersection, so the one cul-de-sac is the through road, and Road B comes in at an intersection. We've redone it, it's a little bit different in the
more
latest
recent.
plan. It's more of an intersection to that cul-de-sac. It's not this configuration we removed.
I think the regulations talk about having block dimensions, this still is, it's like a short cul-de-sac coming in, it's, again, this is my,
Yeah, I'm just asking, I'm
Yeah.
just curious
I-
why.
No, I agree, and also, we have, is there 3 cul-de-sacs there?
well, this one
Well, that
right
one
now
would
is
be-
in Monroe, that's just, I guess it's temporary
That's the
until they extend
temporary
it.
one, correct, and that would be eliminated if this were ever extended.
So, my feeling is that while,
But just to show you, because it does change it significantly, the revised layout makes it more of a through street
Yes.
rather than like a dog.
yeah, I don't,
Just
yeah.
We're looking at
I
lot
appreciate
2, is
that
that what we're looking
argument,
at?
go
but
like this with an intersection.
I don't see that as an intersection. I see that as a really short cul-de-sac next to,
There's no
A cul-de-sac.
regulation against having a short cul-de-sac.
well, we'd have to really be granting 2 waivers.
It's that cul-de-sac is 150 feet long, so That piece,
That's-
Road B.
We have 2 cul-de-sacs, both of which are exceeding 500 feet.
It's correct, because I can't get to the property without exceeding the 500 feet.
Right. So, again, my opinion is that this bulb, I don't think would be approvable. As far as extending the cul-de-sac farther than 500, I think that's a discussion. You know, what's reasonable, because we do have cul-de-sacs that are longer than 500 feet. And so I think it's a matter of taking and weighing everything into account here. So, while I'm okay with a cul-de-sac, I'm not, I don't think 2 cul-de-sacs would have been reasonable and approvable. That's my take on
I
this.
agree with that.
I agree with that. I'm just concerned about the flow from lots 2 and 3 out of this intersection. I just don't know, with the curve the way it is, and it's not a great place for a stop sign, just so the way it's configured, that you would stop traffic on, well, proposed Road B.
Yeah, Road B would be a stop, and then Road A would be no stop.
Would be straight through.
Correct.
I get that. I just don't feel like it's a great layout for it.
And actually, it follows with that exact issue with stop signs at those types of intersections.
It's a standard intersection. Just because it's if that was say that was a road that continued, that would be a standard intersection.
That's fine if it's a standard, it doesn't mean that it would.
If anything, the cul-de-sac makes it low volume traffic. You have 2, maybe a third house coming off that, which is not a lot of cars. But anyway, continue on with the lots.
So, so we're talking about kind of a combination of the cul-de-sac and lots 2 and 3.
Well, I think if we could, we'll just continue with the lots, and then eventually we'll get to the...
To the yeah.
to the
So I think lot 3, in terms of, is there more usable area relative to the Orange and Rockland easement? I think there is. Everybody okay with lot 3 or not okay with lot 3? Yeah, no?
I'm gonna go back to lot 2. I'm gonna be the lone dissent here, I think, on the board.
Well, you may not be.
Well, okay. In my professional experience, I'm some combination of John and Kelly, and I've seen a lot of real estate developers, and if you give them a lot of money and they throw it at an architect or an engineer, they tend to make the wildest things happen. And if this is geometrically possible, they will find a way to make it happen. So I'm okay with lots 2 and 3.
Okay. Yeah, I think we were generally okay with 2 and 3.
Oh, okay.
We were talking more about the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm talking about, because if the lot access on lot 2 is solely through the cul-de-sac, then you can't really have lot 2 or 3 without the cul-de-sac.
Right.
Yeah, I think he's, well, the objection
You
to the
can have-
cul-de-sac is an objection to lots 2 and 3, right?
Yeah.
'Cause that's
That's
kind
Right.
of where...
So you could still get lots. The question is how much frontage, how can you design the coming in if it doesn't have a bulb to
And-
still accommodate a lot?
And from my experience, I've seen that if somebody has enough money, they will make it happen.
Yeah, but I don't think we're looking at,
It looks
money.
like only the person
Well,
who's
the other-
on lot 2 or lot 3 is gonna use that cul-de-sac anyway.
And it's a
Nobody
lot
else
of
is gonna be
pavement
there.
for that number of houses.
anybody have issue with lot 4?
No.
I don't have an issue with 4. Anyone 5? We're good with 5? Yes? I am.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lot 6. I'm good with lot 6.
Good call.
Yes, yes?
Yes, yeah.
Good.
Lot 7?
Good.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm okay with lot 7. Lot 8?
yeah.
Good.
Yes, yes. I'm okay with lot 8. Lot 9? I'm okay with lot 9.
Yeah.
Yes, yes?
Yep.
Yeah.
Anthony?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay.
And I'm.
I know this has to
okay
do with the
it, but collectively,
cul-de-sac.
It has to do with the cul-de-sac.
Yes.
It also has to do with the amount of rock that's anticipated to make this work and the impact to the land. So, and also the considerations for the length of the cul-de-sac. So I brought this up 2 meetings ago, and when you pick these lots, going lot by lot, it's fine because geometrically it's working. I have a serious concern, and I don't think it's reasonable for the lot on the cul-de-sac. but, you know,
We'll
It's fine
go
to
through the
continue,
geometry,
right.
and then we'll talk cul-de-sac. Lot 10, I'm not so sure about Lot 10, only because I don't know, with all the grading, with the rock cut, steep slopes, et cetera, I don't know that that would be a reasonable lot.
I agree.
Lot 10 we redid, so it's different from what's on this plan.
Do you have a copy of it?
I have it right here, Bonnie, if you want.
That's the...
This is the most recent.
Okay.
It proposes the driveway coming out through a narrow.
Oh, that was,
I remember
yeah, that was
this.
option A, and B, we had it coming off here, and,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
this
so
one was
I
the-
have the B, but the A is a flag lot, and we don't
I
allow,
think the A would be a rear dwelling, so
right, so it wouldn't be allowed.
Even if it was the frontage off of Arico?
Now, with that,
the way it's worded is it's a dwelling situated behind another dwelling with access.
right,
Okay.
right, so I don't think 10 is doable.
Well,
That's,
then I would go to option B, which has the access off of Arico.
right, but I'm saying I don't think, I would not necessarily approve a lot 10 if it's requiring a lot of disturbance to steep slopes to get one dwelling unit in there.
Well, they're actually very similar to the two lots to the north with the,
9 and,
off the property. Very similar
Over here?
configuration, yeah, for the two lots that were built up there with winding long driveways.
Can we see up there?
So if
or
you
no?
could
I can bring it up.
This is,
Yeah, I
John had
brought it.
provided us this. So, let me orient.
I actually can get the,
So, this is,
Is that the house?
this is this house. This is the longest, windiest driveway. I'm just not sure. What I don't believe is, although there's a very long driveway that's as steep as what would be required for here, although.
I'd
I
hate
mean,
shoveling.
you could see the cut that they had to do to put that in.
This driveway came in, there's a significant wall that wraps right around to the house here, and then this driveway comes in, the same thing, there's a wall here, there's a wall here, there's a wall there.
Right,
That's the driveway.
that's to get up to the grade, but this area over here, isn't that
This-
where there's rock to come up into it?
Hmm? Yeah.
Whereas,
Same configuration, it'd be the
But-
winding driveways up.
yeah, but I don't think this required the rock cut.
But the rock cut
This is different terrain than what this is to get up there.
Yeah, but I'm saying is the rock cut is irrelevant for purposes of whether it's approvable.
Well, it's about amount of disturbance, I don't
And
know.
that's why we did a specific grading plan and a profile for that lot to show that it meets the code for the driveway slope. And we've done all the radiuses so that it can take emergency vehicles, and we provided a pull-off area going down that.
No, I'm still generally not okay with 10. And that's on one member.
Yeah, no,
So, but other
Just saying
members
there's a
may,
lot of- there's a lot of-
other members may feel differently. Anybody else want to speak on 10?
I'm still skeptical about it. I mean, it's the same issue, that I initially had. There's a lot of steep slope there. There's a lot of exposed bedrock. Yes, Marcus said anything is conceivably buildable. I don't disagree with that, but buildable doesn't necessarily equate to approvable. And in my mind, that wouldn't be a good decision on our part.
It's questionable.
I think it goes back to, Jason and I had said this as well, I think earlier, and you had said whether you can consider the financial thing of it, and I think it cuts into the reasonable thing as well. So it's, if it costs $2,000 versus $1,000, I'd say that's not really reviewable on a plan, but it would be rather extreme. I've driven past Arico Terrace, and it does look, I don't know. It looks like it's an intimidating cliff when you drive past it. But
Lot,
The way-
thank you.
the way it grades out, it's not as severe as you would think. There's still cut there, no doubt about it, but it's not, I think what you're imagining is like a tunnel or almost like a.
you've
both
seen
sides.
it. You've driven past
Oh,
it
yeah,
right
yeah,
by
no,
near the
I walked
YMCA
it.
and all that. Yeah,
But
yeah.
the path that it can take is actually it's a reasonable path. It's not something that's really pie in the sky. That's all.
Yeah. And,
So, lot number 11, are we generally okay with that? I mean, as a lot configuration, I'm okay with it.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
fine.
okay. Lot number 12, I'm not a fan of lot number 12 because it's odd shape. But can you fit a house on it? Yes. Is there some area for, I guess, yard? It's definitely borderline for me, but I don't know, what does everybody else think?
Are we still looking at the easement? There's no easement on 11 or 12, right?
No, so now we're out of easement, so these are just lot area, that's showing that there's 11,558 square feet. There are little steep slopes in the back, but that was subtracted out to get to your net area anyway.
Correct.
And,
And those steep slopes are the ones in gray, kind of in the point there as you get close to
Correct.
the intersection of Rico.
Yes.
But it looks relatively flat before you get to the, not flat,
Yeah,
but
there's
relatively.
about probably a 6 or an 8 foot drop from the road
Okay.
across that lot. And actually, in the most recent version, that lot, it was a little slightly reconfigured to give it a little more area.
Yeah.
okay.
So for 12, I'm sort of like weird but doable.
Yeah. I agree too. It's not my favorite lot, but is there a usable area? I guess there is.
And even though it's not my favorite lot, I still think it's better than 10.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
It just kind of, it got weird because of the nature of the overall lot that we have.
Right. And then ultimately, when we get to a cluster, obviously, everything will
Calm down.
calm down. But if this were, again, we have to look at this
Right.
as, would we approve this? And to me, 12 is borderline, but I see some area for yard. You know, the building is there. As you said, it's generally flat, so I'm okay with 12. Lot 13, I'm generally okay with 13.
13.
I'm good with
Yes.
it.
Yeah?
Yep.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay. Lot 14, I'm okay with 14.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, lot 15?
Good. Yeah.
Yep, okay. Lot 16, again, not my favorite, only because of the amount of space that the stormwater management area would take up, but I don't even know that that'll actually be the area. And
Correct, and
it might be smaller, right?
it could be, yeah. We did a preliminary sizing of it.
Okay.
Just rough, like what would, between the proposed dwelling and the possible stormwater management, how much distance are we talking about in this picture?
Well, actually, in this picture, we sized it. I think on yours, you see the dashed
Yep.
circle? That's the actual, would be the size of the facility.
Is it 50 feet between that dash line and the proposed house? Is it 100 feet?
From that dash line to the house, we got,
Based
I could
on
probably
these-
measure it
look,
off
Based
if
on
this is
these,
scalable.
it's probably
40
50.
feet.
Okay.
What's the,
It's 50 scale.
50
It's
scale?
as far away as his neighbor's house, kind of.
Yeah, 'cause
Yeah.
it
you're trying to
basically-
find,
I
what
could take that
measurement?
lot and, the house could rotate 90 degrees, so there's plenty of room there.
The basin's not on that plan.
Yeah, the basin's not on this plan. It looks like,
I see it. Okay. So we're okay with that. So that was 16. So right now, I think we have to then tackle the cul-de-sac issue. So I think as far as lots themselves, the one that we have in question is lot 10, on the basis of the actual lot configurations. Is that correct? Do we have any other issues?
Lot 10.
Lot 10, right? Okay, so lot 10 is questionable. And so now we have to talk about the two cul-de-sacs.
Hold on. Could you go back? I missed your point on lot 10.
Lot 10 is the large lot with the grading.
Oh, okay.
So I think, in general, people felt that that wasn't something that was necessarily approvable. So I've stated for the record that I don't think, as a board, well, I shouldn't say as a board, I, as a planning board member, would not favor two cul-de-sacs like that configuration.
And as a board, would we agree to granting a waiver
For the two cul-de-sacs?
for one
For
cul-de-sac?
one cul-de-sac, I'm more flexible on granting the waiver for a cul-de-sac, as long as it's designed,
How long are we asking, how many feet is would the waiver be for?
what's the length being shown?
This
you remember?
length is 905 feet from Scunnamunk to the end of the cul-de-sac.
And then the recent submission, you showed 815, I
The
think.
cluster would be 812.
So,
That's from Scott.
That's from Scunnamunk.
And what's
Internally, the cul-de-sac length from the property line to the end is 485 feet, just on the property,
That's on the conventional.
conventional.
And before you get to the property line, how long is the road?
From Scunnamunk to the property line is 420 feet,
And the maximum cul-de-sac length without a waiver is?
500.
500.
So at 500, you're arguing that you would need a waiver to be able to put the bulb
Correct,
within this area.
because the bulb is 100, it's a 100-foot diameter essentially.
Right. And if we didn't allow that, then actually, you can't, you could put like a driveway in there maybe, and another driveway, and maybe 2 or 3 lots.
I don't know. I don't think so, because there's no public road frontage.
Well, this frontage here goes to the border, right?
Which lot?
You would have, the only...
I'm sorry. So I'm looking at the Village of Monroe.
your only pub would be this.
Right, and then Orico you have, for lots, I'm just saying for lots, you have there, in theory, although I think it's very
We
difficult.
just got done arguing about.
Right, and then,
How
so
unreasonable
then
it is to come off
access.
Rico, and now we're saying, what if we
Yeah,
built off it?
okay, so I would say
Funny.
2 then, perhaps.
Yeah.
If we don't allow it to, if we don't allow for a waiver, essentially, you can't get,
Can just to understand what you're
cul-de-sac
saying,
bulb.
you're saying if it was, if you don't approve the waiver and you're measuring 500 feet from Scunnamunk, we barely get to the complex at all, and only get 1 or 2 lots, we probably get to
You would probably
the
end
stone
up-
wall somewhere?
right. Well, you're saying at the stone wall, that length is 400 and,
That's correct. So from Scunnamunk to the stone wall is 420 feet to this point.
Oh, okay, thank you, that helps, just to, all right.
and since you need a,
To do the 500, you'd have to do the cul-de-sac bulb, but you couldn't do this in this arrangement. And
Because
what
you'd have to be-
happens is This cul-de-sac
Right.
would be abandoned, you'd end up with some
right.
double.
So the nominal amount of dwellings.
Wait a minute, did John just disagree with the double bulb? Boy, the tables have turned.
No.
Well,
No, he disagreed with.
I disagree with putting a bulb in a bulb.
Yeah.
No, there's no stub.
So, but to get just the bulb in, we have to allow some waiver, right? To make that happen,
That's, yes.
right?
And then
Otherwise, there is no subdivision. It's a couple of building lots, maybe.
I think it's probably 1.
I think maybe 2. Because you have that
you don't
other
have-
access, so you could
Because
do 2.
You don't have the frontage, you don't have public road frontage.
Yeah,
It's only that
access.
temporary width there.
Yep.
for that.
So,
I'm fine with that.
So that Anthony approved.
Not a landowner.
all right.
1 year 11.
We're talking about the one in the village. That would go away if.
So it is important to consider, whether the waiver is obviously something that the planning board is authorized to grant, and it's in the code for a reason.
It's the
to
same
consider, whether you would grant that, and for the conventional.
And if you were looking, I'm sorry, I didn't know, I thought you were finished, I didn't mean to cut you off. If you're considering whether or not to grant the waiver, this is the plan that's in front of us, and you're
I'm just
considering
trying-
if you grant the waiver, you're bringing in the best interest of the community and best interest, prosperity, and whatever the community, meaning these residents, and this builder who wants to make use of the land, and the surrounding properties who have stuff there, and, that's,
Same consideration to give to any subdivision, so the general welfare, health, safety, circulation, all of that comes
Yeah.
into play here.
So we don't have a lot of extensively long cul-de-sacs. Some of them are roads that have existed for a while. And they don't have a lot of homes on them. So my position is I'm willing, I think, based on what you're showing, to
If you go down,
extend.
I think I saw some.
Right over
little
here?
There was some circles there. Go down a little, I thought.
Down? Oh, that's over here. Overlook.
Is all
Yeah.
circles.
Yep, that.
Yeah, I mean, how many units are on one of those
That's in the
circles,
village,
do
I
you think?
That's the village. So they have different
Oh.
regulations.
All right, but
That's Wingate Woods.
As compared to other municipalities around, 800, 500-foot cul-de-sacs are very short. I mean, most other municipalities, you're 1,200, 1,500. That's sort of the average that goes around.
I would say that, in my experience, those lengths of cul-de-sacs were grandfathered and have become outdated, and that they're going towards shorter cul-de-sacs. So I don't,
Yeah.
I don't know if that, I would go off that, and I would say that for this overall subdivision, because I know we went through each lot, but I think there's some tenuous situations that I think make this a difficult lot to, subdivision to approve. Personally, I think in terms of its constructability, its impact to the layout and the area and the geography of the overall property. And so, it's very difficult for me to say that I'm comfortable with that layout that shows 16 lots. I just, I don't think it's reasonable.
one thing for John, I guess, is, maybe we have a shorter regulation because we don't like cul-de-sacs, or maybe they are becoming less fashionable, but it's not like he's doing a cul-de-sac because he loves them. It's sort of it is a weird situation of the property being far away from the road. So he had a particular purpose in it, and he was, I don't know, circumstances dictated it. It wasn't that he just said, "Oh, I think I could make, a cul-de-sac being, a new fashion or a great idea."
Can we, since again, this is all about the cul-de-sacs, can we discuss then, at least let's talk about the fact that there are two. In general, I already expressed for the record that I don't think that the two would have been a layout I would have approved. I don't think that it's reasonable the way it's designed. Anthony, I think you agreed with that.
I agree.
With the two. I think, Jeff, you agreed with that?
Correct.
Okay. What are other people's sentiments?
I actually don't mind the cul-de-sac between 2 and 3. I don't think there's a lot of traffic that's going to go that way.
Okay.
I tend to agree with that view. Yes, it's a lot of pavement for 2 houses, but it's, for this particular kind of plan, that's what's required in order to make those houses feasible. And
Well-
if your result is zoning compliant lots with a reasonable ease of entrance to those lots from that cul-de-sac,
But just so you know, that because it's 2 cul-de-sacs, they're both over 500, so it's 2 waivers.
correct.
So just so you're aware.
And I think without granting those waivers, it could, if they were my client, and this is a big if statement, I would protest that. I would stand on a table and argue with it, with anyone who would listen.
But I think we're asking for your opinion as a planning board member.
As a planning board member, I would be okay with it.
Okay.
Oh, I'm not a fan of the second bulb, but I was if 2 and 3 were one lot, I think then we could eliminate that second bulb,
Right.
and then
Yeah.
that would be acceptable.
And-
And I do think it's a funny shape, and
It is, but the result is you have two lots that you can use because
Well-
of this bulb.
well, I
think
mean, and there is
I'm okay
provisions
with
for
that.
providing a waiver, but I don't know. I don't even know if there is a provision for providing a waiver for 2 cul-de-sacs.
That's why it'd be 2
Longer
waivers.
500.
So
Well,
I think there are 4 people have expressed they don't like the 2 cul-de-sacs.
I'm just saying, if
At
there's
this point.
if there was a rule that said I could have a waiver of having an extra apartment in my house, and then I said yes, I'm submitting 18 of those waivers because I'm not opening a hotel. I'm just having a 19 single apartments off of my garage. That you know what I mean? Like I don't know. When you say it's just a second waiver on the same thing, I'm not sure that's. I don't think that may not just be.
How much of the road maybe I'm missing something. Are we double counting some of the road length in these waivers?
There are 2 cul-de-sacs and each one is over 500 feet.
Okay.
So,
If you're saying, are we double counting some of the distance? Yeah, because say it's 500, almost just barely past the wall.
Okay.
If this one's 600 and that one's 900, it's
Got it, okay.
500 of it's the same. Yeah, yes.
so,
Yeah.
so I think the majority at this point,
But isn't the cluster plan or the conventional plan proof that it could work, meets the zoning, meets the criteria for
Sorry,
it?
what was that again? I didn't.
The conventional plan. Isn't the whole point of this exercise to prove that these lots are feasible, meaning it meets the code, meets the bulk requirements, and if that road had to go in?
Well,
Yeah,
I
but it
think
meets the
it's
code
whether
and the
it's-
requirements and the
I'm just getting
reasonable
nervous that we're
waivers.
blending
Let's-
kind of opinions
let
with...
our attorney
As
speak.
long as you have to show that they all meet the code, but it's also this board in their planning aspects and looking at the planning elements to determine whether this is a good approvable plan. So yeah, it meets the code, but is it something they would actually approve? As a-
And
Well, if it met the
and all
code
I've heard is
completely,
just
no, if it
opinion,
met,
not-
if it met
there's
the
no-
code,
Oh, sorry.
sorry, if it met
Yeah,
the
go
code, we wouldn't have an option, and it would just be approved. But it needs a waiver, because it didn't meet
Correct.
everything. So we'd say, would we grant the waiver? And I guess I was saying there's 2 waivers. There's one for
Let's just say one for Road A, one for Road B.
one for cul-de-sac A being the longest one, and cul-de-sac B being the shorter one. And I'm not sure if we're allowed to even do the 2 cul-de-sacs, and even if we are allowed to do it, I don't know if we're obligated to approve it, and I don't think a lot of the board members liked it. And the first one gives you, I don't know, just rough, I think the first one gives you 13 units, and cul-de-sac B gives you 1 more. And I presume you'd rather have cul-de-sac A than B, but it would be up to you. But,
Well said, Jim.
John, a question for you. So, going back to the previous configuration, if you were looking at something like that, but you eliminated proposed bulb B, would there be enough frontage for 1 lot then, if the road just curved to the left? If the cul-de-sac?
I don't know. I'd have
Okay.
to- yeah, I have to-
I don't know either.
Yeah, I don't know either. I have to calculate.
So,
Right, because the area below the bulb is that's part of lot 2 right now?
The area, I mean, where it says stormwater management?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is part of lot number 2.
So the frontage would start at the border between the village and the town and run to wherever.
Technically, I didn't take it from there, I took it
No,
from... Yeah,
from-
I know what you're saying, though.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a
Yeah.
handle on what we have and what we don't have.
I think you'd have to come back with showing
Yeah,
us
I have to
removal of the,
calculate, yeah,
right.
correct.
So,
I just have one minor clarification. If a waiver is granted for Road A, for the length, does the same, why, Road B would be shorter, so would that be considered separate? Because Road A has gotten its waiver.
I thought
And that was...
I thought they were
my
separate. So
question
you
Road
could
B
do
would be a separate road, but it meets the 500 feet.
right,
I
but
don't
there,
know.
but, again,
You know
from
what I'm
my,
saying?
I
Right.
guess what you're
It's-
saying is you asked for row A today.
Well,
Pretend.
yeah,
But
pretend,
just
yeah.
pretend.
Right.
And then you build that, and then later on you come back and say, oh, I want to do cul-de-sac B.
Correct.
And it's really super short, and it's right off a cul-de-sac.
but,
And
but I,
sort of my
technically,
question
Road B
earlier.
is only 150 feet long, so it wouldn't need a waiver, because
Yeah,
they
but-
already had gotten its waiver.
So you're saying
Then
build
the
A,
plan
build all
at
those
that
homes, leave
No, I'm
those
saying,
empty.
do
We'd
it-
have
I'm
to
not
still-
saying separate them at all, but for purposes of the waiver, is
Right.
it really one waiver, and then you wouldn't need one for B, or is it really 2?
I see it as, I just see 2 cul-de-sacs. And I see a cul-de-sac which is introducing, first of all, it's like I said, it's right off of that curve. It's only serving 2 homes. I don't think it's a necessary improvement. I think that you probably can get still 1 lot there. And I would rather see a more conforming type cul-de-sac coming into the subdivision. And again, I think we've heard that even the highway superintendent, if this were proposed and in front of him, he may not be that thrilled with the dedication. So that's part of the opinion too. So I think at this point, again, 4 members have said no on that short cul-de-sac because of its configuration. So now the question is the length of the second cul-de-sac and the second cul-de-sac. What are people's thoughts?
I just have one little wrap-up one on the one. I understand John's point. If he built A, and B would be a short cul-de-sac, doesn't that justify doing A and B together at the same time? And there's just a difference. I mean, if we had built an A, and A had existed for a while, and there were no issues with it, and then you want to do B, that's one thing. When you ask for A and B together, it's... I think it could be seen substantially different as than having A already built and just asking for B. What's that?
Yeah, I mean, that could come in front of us and we would say, no, it's a lot and you don't need a cul-de-sac. I mean, that could be the other reaction to that, yeah.
In reality, where he built A and everything went smoothly and he came in and asked for a waiver for B, it might work, but that's having additional information that you had done the long cul-de-sac here already and there were no issues with it.
Yeah,
and even then, there'd be a cul-de-sac off a cul-de-sac issue, which I'm not sure is a slam dunk
But then it would
anyway.
have originally been approved at best at one lot here, and then you'd have to come for the cul-de-sac, you'd have to propose this and dividing this into two lots. So, so at that point, this was already considered as one lot. And I think that just puts us back to where we were. Yeah, I have to say, I still feel that I would consider a waiver. I think we've kind of enumerated on a lot of the properties off of the proposal that we're generally comfortable with those. It would require a waiver to get a cul-de-sac in there to do those properties. That land is buildable for sure, and I'm comfortable with a longer cul-de-sac. I think ultimately what we would wind up approving is going to become a function of whether we go with conventional or cluster and what we are ultimately comfortable with as far as what's dedicated to a conservation easement. But that's a secondary issue. But for looking at this conventional layout where that's not an issue, I'd consider that length for a waiver.
Okay.
With the one cul-de-sac.
And so, Mark, real quick, as far as if that bulb went away and it's just the one cul-de-sac, the grading, being able to get driveways off of it, where were we as far as buildability?
Well, we don't have a design yet for the reconfigured lot 2 and 3, but I suspect that John can work on, I guess it would either be one lot, get down to one lot on the right side of the entry road, or 2 if he can fit them and meet zoning.
And then, but the rest of the cul-de-sac length, to the end, there's no issues from a grading perspective?
No, he's provided, again, we're looking this on a preliminary basis, almost a concept basis.
Right.
So have we looked at final plans and deemed the road construction is in final form?
Right.
The answer to that is no.
And it may still change.
Unless the board cares to, as part of a yield plan, require that you take it to the final stage, which I don't know any boards that do that.
Right.
I can't give you a definitive. I can't give you a definitive answer. I can tell you that they've provided us with a profile. They've shown us that the cuts are reasonable.
Okay.
We don't have borings. We don't know if there's rock removal, but we know that they have provided us with a grade that meets the town road specifications.
And getting back to what we're doing, we're trying to find out the maximum yield, because ultimately the yield is going to depend on the engineering, the design, if there's a cluster, if they meet the 50% open space, or whatever the other requirements are part of that process. So this is really looking at the conventional plan, what we would have approved. So,
And just to follow up that further, we did do the grading for all the lots throughout. So there is a grading plan that shows that all the lots are accessible from the road, and that...
Which was one of the thresholds that we asked John to include on the yield plan.
Correct.
Because I have had plans submitted in years past where they've showed us you can build a road, but then you could never get to any of the lots. So we asked them to demonstrate that as well.
okay. Anybody else?
So where do we stand on Lot 10 then, if we're looking at combining 2 and 3? So we have 16 proposed.
So we're just,
looking at possibly getting rid of one, because if we get rid of the bulk B that we've called it, so that's down to 15 lots.
so if we're,
And are we keeping 10 or
if,
not?
no, I think everybody said 10, well, the majority said 10 was not reasonable, not approvable, so that was one. And then if 3 and 2 are, have to be combined, then that would be another one, so then we're going from 16 to 14.
14.
So that's where we are right now.
It
Jason
sounds
or
reasonable.
Lisa, anything on the length?
It sounds reasonable. I mean, we've talked this through, and
The length?
I think we're trying to do the best we can and fit in the most amount of homes that we can with, you know, making it reasonable, like you said.
Yeah. Jason?
I think the whole purpose of this exercise is to show that we can fit as many zoning compliant lots on this property, and I think that's what the full 16 does. How reasonable a developer might might go for is not really within our purview. I think we have to look at basically the zoning code as it is, and it doesn't really say there's a whole lot that we have to take in on the developer side. I think that second cul-de-sac is, if that's what they want to do, then that's within their right on their property.
No, it's not.
No.
I think it comes to,
I mean, it has to be within the law, essentially.
yes, it has to be within zoning, but it has to be approvable within zoning.
And I think
Right.
that
And-
this exercise is showing that.
Right, I mean, you could look at old subdivisions and old bungalow colonies that have been gridded out, they were built, but you actually can't build them because they're on rock faces, or they're, you know, that's the way they used to do it back in the 30s and the 20s. You know, it's happened in Sloatsburg, it's happened in Greenwood Lake. They're just areas that, regardless of whether they're platted, yeah, maybe it met the zoning, but a lot of those lots aren't buildable. So it's about a combination of, yes, you know, does it meet zoning, but is it also reasonable when you look at the terrain of the land, et cetera?
And I still think that this shows that it is buildable,
Okay,
and therefore reasonable.
okay.
How reasonable is a different story.
So, Anthony,
I see a conventional plan that doesn't meet code because of the cul-de-sac lengths, and if we were to hold to that, that lot would only yield 2 or 3 lots and would require a waiver. So I don't think, you know, the number that I think that was reasonable is somewhere between 3 and 14.
okay.
Yeah, I like I said before, if it met every provision, then it would be approved already. And if they're asking for a waiver, and we'd have to consider whether or not we'd approve that waiver, you know, approving one is one thing, and I thought approving 2 is a different matter. And that's where I went on, thinking 2 and 3 should be one lot.
So we have Jason and Lisa who have expressed that the length is okay. Jeff, you're okay?
Lisa, I'm not sure. Lisa, oh,
That the length is okay.
For Road A.
oh, for road, oh, we're just talking road
We're just
A?
talking about, right.
Oh, okay.
So just to be clear, getting to the end
Yeah, that,
for a waiver.
well, I wouldn't want to limit them to 2 or 3 homes off of the rock wall. I mean, it's, you know, it's a benefit to having more homes built, and I think we'd be missing out on that if we didn't grant a waiver. And I mean, of the 2 waivers, the one for Lot A, I think we'd want to have. I wish it had fewer units, but I thought those, you know, if it was a waiver we would tend to approve.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to limit them to building 2 houses on something that could hold 16 for holding that up,
Okay.
you know, to that level anyway.
Jeff? Did you already?
Yes, I mean, as far as considering a waiver, I'm still for that, for 1 cul-de-sac. You know, generally speaking, I think with the exception of these lots, this is relatively in keeping with this area of town. You know, it doesn't just fit the zoning. It it does sort of fit the environment, with the exception of the length of the cul-de-sac. But it's the best solution to a bad situation.
So, with that then, are we at basically remove the second cul-de-sac bulb and lot 10, one absorbed into one of the other lots, and lot 2 or 3 will likely be combined so that they can meet frontage? Is that kind of where we are,
I think so.
the majority?
Okay, so the recommendation is Road B, the short cul-de-sac, not in favor of it.
Correct.
Road A, you would,
The majority.
majority would consider granting the waiver. Because I don't want to redo this plan and then we come back and, the waiver
Right.
is for nothing.
Wait,
Right.
are we going to redo this plan? I mean,
I'm going to redo it for lots 2 and 3 and see what configuration, with removing Road B, what we come up with. I want to just double check
And
the
then,
widths.
and then the majority didn't favor 10. So I think right now
Your
we're,
diligence is
right now,
incredible.
we're thinking around 14. And then we have to go from there, because then we have to deal with the cluster.
Correct. So what I'm going to do is, we're going to redo the conventional plan, removing B. Still gonna
Removing
leave
B?
10
What
on
was
there.
B?
B is the short one.
B, cul-de-sac B.
I'm gonna leave
Sorry.
10 on there.
They should put A and B on the next version.
It's on this line.
It is, it's on there.
Ah, sorry.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
I
this
will
one.
reconfigure lots 2 and 3.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll see where we end up.
Okay,
Okay?
all right.
All right.
All right.
Thank you for
We're getting
taking-
close.
Thank you for taking the time.
Just so
thank you.
we send John with complete directions, are you asking him to just rework the conventional plan, the yield plan?
Yes.
Or are you asking him to also now turn back the cluster plan to 14, if he can make 14 work, and come up with a new concept plan for the cluster? So you'll have them both to look at.
I guess depending on his confidence on how well he can get lots 2 and 3 to look on this map.
Ultimately, you're going to have to okay the yield plan. I'm just asking for efficiency.
Yeah, do you
If
want to see?
he can get the 14 in with the proper frontage for lots 2 and 3, eliminate lot 10, blend it into whatever lot is appropriate, you're down to 14. Do you want him or not want him to rework the cluster plan based on 14, or wait?
I don't think it would be advisable to rework the cluster plan at this point. I think we're close to coming up with a yield. I think we get a final number on the yield, then you can give us a final cluster plan at that point. And then we know, then...
Again, I had no preference.
No,
I'm just
I know
asking
that.
so that John
Right.
knows
But
what you want him to do.
So I will resubmit a new conventional.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I think we would ask Ashley, just for a resolution, at that meeting to memorialize the decision as far as what the maximum is based on the conventional. And then we can move forward on the cluster.
Cluster.
All right?
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, come on. I'm telling you, it's crying out loud.
So, next item on the agenda is Foreign Objects Beer Company. Good evening.
Hello, everyone.
Thanks for waiting for us, David.
If I'd known, I would have asked to bring some samples along for everyone.
So, you want to give us an overview?
Yeah, I believe we're at the final stage. I appreciate Mark's memo of June 18, 2019, regarding his meeting with the building inspector, and apparently we satisfied those requirements. He's continuing the use of a restaurant tavern, which is permitted. We noted that on the plan. He says that the site and building do not need to be brought into the requirements or updated requirements, since the renovation doesn't exceed 50% of the cost to replace the building.
So our plans, I believe, comply with the zoning codes, and I don't know of any other outstanding concerns.
So Mark, do you want to go over, have you had a chance to look at this plan?
Sure, I took my notes from the last appearance and just kind of updated where it stood. Yes, Ben, as noted in my memorandum, provided some guidance on how you consider the site use. So that, I think, is resolved. And as far as the need to bring the building into compliance with the current codes, that's purely a function of the value of the renovation relative to the value of the existing building. So that's a building department issue, and he didn't believe that that threshold had been crossed. But that, again, is not really part of the planning board review. Relative to the items discussed at the prior meeting of the planning board, we had talked about a referral being made to the Orange County Department of Public Works. I don't know if that went out. So that's something that I think Noreen was going to make.
Right, and did anybody see a GML review come across? I didn't.
No.
No, so I
So
don't
it's
think we have it yet.
both GML referrals, both to county
Right.
DPW and
And the-
to county planning.
Correct.
One of the issues that I had discussed at the prior meeting, again in anticipation of what the DPW will likely want, is to make sure that it's a surveyed location of the improvements on the site plan relative to the traveled way improvements. He does show an edge of traveled way. I anticipate that county highway is going to want an actual physical location of the striping on the road, because that's what they go by for the traveled way. So as long as that is the white shoulder line, then fine. If it isn't, you really probably should get that shown. I would anticipate that's what they're going to want. I'm trying to save you some time. I had pointed out that the spacing between the 3 parking spaces on the north and the front row should be increased. We do have wheel stops there now, but the 3 northerly spaces on the front row, if they pull up and hit the wheel stop, they're also going to be hitting the side door of the car in the 3rd space. So I had suggested that you provide some spacing there to keep that conflict from occurring, and you've got room, so I suggest that you still do that. That's really hasn't changed from what I mentioned at the last meeting. I had suggested.
I don't have that in any of your comments.
Well,
So then
the-
if we
the-
remove that one space and he'd still meet the 12,
or just shift the 3 over to the east
okay.
and leave a space.
The edge of, we show the edge of existing paving there already. That means we would have to increase the paving.
You'd have to put a little bit of paving in, probably 3 feet of paving. I don't
Would you
think,
consider a guardrail instead of wheel stops?
No, we have not.
Would you?
I,
That would more ensure that if car's parking over the wheel stop, that he's not
Correct.
going to hit the door
No.
of someone
Either
in that
or
third.
bollards?
yeah, well, I mean, I would definitely
Or
consider
remove
bollards over.
or remove the space because
Remove
you
one
only need
space.
12.
Well, I
Stripe it.
was also concerned about the spaces that front into the building as well, and if there's adequate protection. I just from experience with wheel stops, they could move, especially if the area's plowed, and that creates problems.
so that's an issue, whatever configuration is acceptable to the board. That's a concern that I had noted. And Dave, the workshop meetings, these work session meetings of the planning board, I have notes and I absorb information from the planning board and kind of make these notes. Formal comments weren't issued from the workshop, so I rely upon applicants keeping notes. So these are the issues I did discuss at the last meeting. One of the other issues that I had pointed out at the last meeting was that there is a conflict, as it may be, between the signage for the handicapped parking and the entrance. That hasn't changed. When you walk out the front door, if the door is depicted correctly, you're walking right into the back of the no parking sign for the crosshatched access aisle, the handicap, I had suggested that the handicap space be shifted to the south so that those signs could be mounted to the building, or at least, at minimum, the signs don't conflict with the door entry. So that has not been corrected or revised.
So, quick, Mark, if I look at the measurement between the wheel stops and the building, it looks like it's 5 feet, is that accurate?
Correct.
Is that okay when you have wheel stops and overhanging cars?
It's,
Or should the wheel stops be pushed back farther?
they should probably be pushed back further. You don't need full handicapped accessible width in all areas, but for the areas where it's a access route, you would want clearly more than just the 5 foot less the overhang, which is usually about 1.5 feet, some 2 feet. And that would constrict it to an unacceptable condition.
So what do you think the width should be?
You want to maintain at least a 4 foot width, and Dave certainly as an architect knows the
Taking into consideration.
handicapped accessible route requirements.
Right, so what's a typical overhang of a car? Is it usually a couple feet, or,
It's usually on average 18 inches.
so you'd have to push them back,
Well, 5
Like a
foot
foot and a
minus
half.
18 is 3.5.
and so you're just off?
42
Yeah, so you
inches.
just have to push it back maybe another foot, the wheel stops?
Well, push it towards the west.
Correct, yep.
Or if you have bollards, as Anthony indicated, the bollard is an absolute limit. So you don't have to worry about the bumpers overhanging if you have a bollard. So that's another approach.
Or even, I don't know if you could put
Rail.
almost like a split rail or some,
A
split
guide
rail may
rail.
not be strong enough,
Put a
but
wooden
some
guide
kind of
rail.
wooden, attractive rail, so then they can't, encroach into that space.
Well, I know when you put in wheel stops, they could allow for the anchors, but then you have to hang into the pavement, and then if they have to be moved, it's
Yeah,
just.
they're a maintenance
long-
headache.
They're a maintenance headache.
The wheel stops? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, bollards would be, I think would not be aesthetically pleasing all along the front of that building, especially since they're proposing that wooden fence, decorative privacy fence along the north side of the building. I mean, I would definitely be more inclined towards a wood fence or wood rail.
So wooden guide rail. Probably would,
Something,
from a style standpoint, would be consistent with the building finish.
you're not changing the facade, right? It's gonna stay exactly as is?
Correct.
Okay.
They are upgrading it because there are things that need to be upgraded.
The reason I ask is we have ARB approval over it, so I just wanna know-
We show a front elevation on A1.
So what is new, what's being changed?
Well, the awning, the existing awnings are being upgraded, the stucco needed to be repaired because there were parts of it that were missing. And we're introducing a new privacy fence on the left side of the elevation with the 3 LED lights and the foreign object sign.
That's gonna be horizontal fencing?
Yeah, horizontal slatted, yes.
Okay. What are the awnings made of?
A canvas type structure,
Like canvas or that,
not metal.
not vinyl?
Oh, vinyl.
Because that vinyl over time can get,
But it's not,
Ratty.
a vinyl weave or canvas type, not a metal or solid structure.
so vinyl weave, how's that different from, like, sometimes if you look, again, like Village of Monroe, Main Street area, they sometimes get beat up, the balloon frame with the vinyl on them.
Okay.
So are you proposing something that's, they're coming out?
Correct.
Like this at an angle, and then it's still vinyl though,
It's a fabric.
a fabric?
Yeah.
Can you bring a sample?
Sure.
Although they might get ratty, they could get replaced more easily too. Not that everyone
It's
does
always a
it.
trade-off.
Not that that happens all the
Not
time.
what I was gonna
but
say, that's the problem.
that,
It's an expense and it's like,
is back to Mark's. thing.
Yeah, I got some more.
Oh, did you?
Pending.
Oh, okay. I was.
I'll go through them all and then you
Okay,
can
go ahead.
drill down on the individual issues. The handicap parking detail, I indicated needed some corrections. I think I had just said it generically, but just to be clear, where a standard space adjoins a handicap space, we're looking for a double line, both the blue line and the white line. For the handicap symbol, that doesn't meet the current standards. It's got to be the new style handicapped symbol. And in front of the cross-hatched access aisle, a sign is required that says no parking anytime. So those items have to be corrected on the plan. You did talk about the fencing, which actually very nicely continues the face of the building and provides that almost like a sign
yeah.
effect.
It's kind of modern, right?
Yeah. One item that I don't know if you were able to figure out, Dave, was you show the access in the rear to the walk-in cooler now. Is that, I don't have any topography here, but is that on grade? Is that accessible? Or
It's
is it
flat.
Okay, so there's no need for a walkway or a sidewalk, it's just, the current grass access is fine?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not anticipating anything to be added. Front of the building is all pavement, so there's no sidewalk there, it's on grade, so you don't need any ramps or access. There's a standard, I'll email it to you, Dave, a standard lighting note that is especially important when you're along a highway. If the LED lights may be very nice, but they also could become a hazard or create glare, so the standard note allows the town some enforcement if a problem is created with the lighting. I'll email you that note.
Is it full cutoff?
I have no idea what the light fixtures are.
We need a detail for the... We need a detail for the light if it's not there, that'll be full cutoff. And also the color rendition, so that it's not gonna be that bright, stark white that you see around. Something that's warmer.
Probably want something down in the 2,500 or 3K range rather than 5, which is pretty difficult.
Horrible.
And if you could work on getting us our normal approval box with the project number in the lower right-hand side of all the drawings, so that it will assist everyone in filing the plans properly. So those were the items from the last review, just an update. It might be advisable at this point to start having this scheduled for the regular meeting rather than workshop, so that we can formalize comments and get it moving forward on that basis.
I'm okay with that. So come to a regular meeting. Hopefully Noreen sent out the GML review. When should we decide whether or not a public hearing should be held? And we can, it's not required. It's optional. I don't recall if we decided already that it didn't need a public hearing. Did we discuss that at the last workshop?
I wasn't
not?
here in June.
I don't think we did. And anybody feel that we should or shouldn't have a public hearing for this application, since it's optional? Thoughts?
It might be good just to have it for transparency's sake. I don't know how many people will actually show up or comment on it. But
Anybody else? Thoughts? Hearing?
I think it's a good idea. I
Okay.
think, I don't live in that area, and it's a residential area, and I just want to hear what if anybody has any
Okay.
particular concern that we haven't considered here.
I think that's reasonable. Anybody else? Public hearing? Thoughts? Because we could schedule it then. Can we schedule it today, so we could start that process?
I would authorize it, subject to the revised plans,
Okay.
because I think you want to have the public hearing with updated plans and also the same plans that you may refer to the county DPW and planning, which I would suggest be the updated plans.
Okay.
I do have a couple comments on the plans as well.
Oh, thank you. Sure, go ahead, Ashley.
Real quick, the size of the proposed sign, the foreign object sign, I think that the table on sheet A1 says 14 square feet, but on sheet A1 it says it's 8 square feet, so that could just be consistent. And then also, it looks like the cooler and part of that.
Wait, can we go back to, what two did you refer to? I know you're referring to the size of the sign, but,
On A1, it's 8 square feet?
well,
Reverse that. On the first sheet,
It's 8.
14, so the table on
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
oh,
And then also on the plan, it looks like the cooler, the little corner of the cooler and the fence will encroach into that 40-foot setback.
Excuse me.
Which plant, are we looking at the first page?
Yes, so on the cooler. Yeah, the cooler and the fence just would be brought in so that they're not encroaching on that setback.
So you have to pull it in a little bit.
Where is this in? Where's the 40-foot setback? There's the... I'm not seeing the cooler thing exactly.
This is the edge of the fence here. We'll stop. Where are you seeing the label for the cooler?
Cooler's in the back, just the upper right-hand corner of the cooler extends into the 40-foot setback area.
Okay.
By probably a foot, but it's just it's a little too...
I think it's this area here. Okay.
Is that existing, that cooler?
no.
Oh, I see the dotted line.
So you're adding a cooler to that side of the building?
Yes.
What does that look like? Is that on the elevations?
No. It's a prefabricated unit.
Could you show us or get us a picture of that? Because then it makes me wonder whether that fence should go along, should wrap around. But then that might be a problem.
I mean,
Are there woods there on the side where the cooler's going? So you wouldn't see it?
no.
Does it generate noise?
No.
And the tank and the AC unit are existing and they're staying where they are?
Yes.
Okay. Ash, you had additional?
No, that was it.
Okay. And that AC unit in the side yard is staying there as well?
Yes.
Okay. So we still haven't decided on with the wheel stops, or you may move those, you'll look into that?
Yeah, let's go back. Well, before we leave, let's go through the list again so we're comprehensive in our scope. The privacy fence is a minor structure, can encroach upon the side yard setback. It's not a permanent structure, it's a decorative element.
Well, I think it's a combination of it's being used as a sign, and then we just have to see if our regulations allow fences to encroach within required yards.
How do we want to go about doing that so we can come to a final decision?
I'll have Ashley look into it. And if she can't find it this evening, we'll get the answer so that you can either shorten it up or it's allowed. It's it's wood slat. What kind of wood is it? Do you know?
Probably along the lines of cedar.
Okay. It's gonna be like stained?
Yes.
Just to point out, if it does say a rule about fences being too close to the road, it's not like it's along the road as a fence for a long period of time. It's kind of jutting out at the road just for, you know what I mean? It's not like it's when you say a fence near a road, you usually picture it along the road, but too close. This is just sticking out at the road as opposed to going along it.
Did we talk at
That
the...
makes a difference.
Yeah, did we talk at the last meeting about the fact that the yard extends into the road? Right? And having a note to be used for highway purposes, or something to that effect? I think we need a note.
Yeah, I believe you did bring that up at the last.
So, normally for the travel way, we put a note that just says, I don't know if you added one. Ashley, do you have standard language that you recommend? I know we do in other places.
We could get something, or if you have something.
Okay.
you recommend.
Maybe I'll send something to you and you could compare it to what you have. So we'll get you a note on that.
So, travel way note?
It's something to the effect of is used for highway purposes or reserved for highway purposes or something to that effect.
And you'll get that to us?
Yes. Actually, it may be I'll send it to Ashley and then Ashley can compile whatever other information we're researching and she can get that to you with us CC'd.
Okay. All right, so we still have the GML
That has to go out.
239 referrals to go out. Okay, so let's go to point number 2 about the 3 spaces on the north side of the property. Based on the fact that a parking overhang of 18 inches, you want to create a 3-foot pathway between the parking spaces along West Monbassia and the ones that come off of Lakeview Drive. So basically move the parking spaces to the east 3 feet.
Well, I think it goes back to how you're going to handle the
wheel
separation.
stops, yeah.
Are you
Well,
going
the
to keep the wheel
separation-
stops, or are you going to put in a wooden guide rail?
Well, they're recommending a split rail, wooden guide rail.
I don't think it's split rail, a wooden guide rail.
But an attractive
Yeah,
guide rail.
similar to what the PIPC used to use along scenic roads, just
In parks.
I think like Tuxedo Park
Well,
has them.
so if it's a wooden guide rail, then that's an absolute
Barrier.
barrier to separate the front row from the side row, so my comment goes away.
Are we all in agreement?
I'd like to see what it would look like, but if it's decorative, I'd be fine with that.
Well, you're talking about a post, the horizontal rails are dadoed into the vertical post all the way across, so it's a continuous horizontal rail.
Yeah, normally they have the concrete anchored wooden 6x6 or
Right.
8x8 set to the correct height, and then two their overlap joints, horizontal pieces bolted to the verticals.
Yeah, I just don't want it to look too utilitarian.
Mhm.
Something that's still attractive for your building.
And since it's only going to be used as a guide rail, can we keep it to that height, 20 inches, 22 inches?
Is that sufficient?
It's got to be the recommended bumper height,
Whatever
whatever.
the bumper height is, I would say. And I think, I don't want to speak for the planning board, but I think wooden is preferred over a metal guide rail.
I would agree.
Will look much better.
Yep.
Was there nothing there before? If that's the picture of it there?
That's it now.
Yeah. And,
Is that like a planting area? Or was a planting area? Hard to tell from the
Hard to
image.
tell.
So are these the kind of, well, you were going through your list.
Yeah, okay, let's continue on. So that satisfies the separation between the north 3 spaces and the spaces along West Monbassia. road.
And then if that,
The-
if that fence is put up, then the signs, do they go on the other side of the fence? Which side of the fence do they go on? Where would they be installed? Do you think, Mark?
Why don't we building mount them?
I would building mount them, but that was, again, my previous comment of shifting the handicap to the south so that you can building mount the signs and you eliminate the, I won't call it a hazard, but it surely isn't desirable to come out the door on a sunny day when your eyes are adjusting and running into the sign. So this eliminates that whole issue. Slide the handicap down
And then building mount.
and then building mount the signs. It's less of a maintenance problem and it's no longer an obstruction.
And then you just have to,
The no parking we can mount to the rail.
Yeah,
No.
I just.
You want it to the building?
The code height is 5 to 7 foot because it does no good if it's so low that you can't read it. So both building mounted at the proper height makes sense. You wouldn't want to put a sign on the guide rail.
Do you want to consider some gap in the rail, maybe further north, so that?
There's got to be a gap
Gap
at
to
the
be able to-
location of the access aisle.
Yeah, no, for the handicap, even further north for the other parking spaces that are towards the north end, maybe another gap in the rail.
to get into
so-
the walkway.
To get into the walkway.
Somewhere you'll need a gap in the rail.
Maybe
Well,
that's,
that's my 4A. How many gaps do we want to have in it? How many interruptions in the rail?
I mean, people could step over this too, right? It's only a couple of feet.
Well, I mean, guide rail is 20 to 22 inches.
Yeah, I would say
couple.
where you see the number 3, just to the left of that, between those spaces,
Mm-hmm.
one would be there, and so, I mean, I'm just talking off the top, but that would be a good place. That's pretty strategic, because you can get access to those lots north of number 3, and then there's that walkway for the side lots, and then the other access is by the handicap in the front door.
So 3.
That's what I'm thinking. Again, if the board has a different opinion.
I'm okay with that.
Good.
Anybody else?
Yeah, that's fine if that works, that's fine.
That would be sufficient, but if the owner wanted to do it so that there was a gap between every 2 spaces, so you could get through every other car, if that's what the owner wanted, as long as it's going to, again, provide that fixed space.
The only
David,
downside is it becomes,
you said 3, and I just want to clarify, I was thinking 2, one for the front door and the handicap, and one further down, but if the owner wants to put more additional, as Jeff is mentioning.
I mean, we're almost negating the use of the walkway between the fence and the building.
If you put too many,
Yeah, I know if we only have 2 spaces or 2 separations or interruptions within the wood rail, pedestrians are
No one's
only
gonna
going
be
to
able
use
to
those
walk
2
through there because
They all have to walk.
yeah.
openings. And so the 5-foot or 6-foot space that we're creating between the front of the building and the wood railing becomes dead space.
so
It's
then,
useless.
You have
so
to
then
walk
you
along
need
the
to
parcel.
come up with what you think is a reasonable number.
Well, quite honestly, in this particular case, I think the wheel stops are the way to go.
Then they have
mean,
to be pushed back.
Well, we could push them back, absolutely. I mean, do I recognize the maintenance requirements associated with the wheel stops? Absolutely. But this is, for the most part, an adult-used facility. It's not a daycare. It's not a school where children are walking along a path and it needs to be barricaded from vehicular traffic because of the safety of the children. This adults are being, for the most part, are using the space. I believe that we have to assume a few certain things, and one is wheel stops would work.
Actually, I'll say this, I was thinking, because this is unusual and it's grandfathered, and I hate to mess with grandfathered stuff because it's proven to work, but if you mess with it, you might change that. And, as you push the cars further back, then when you're backing up, you can't see around them very well. I don't know if anyone's ever gone to the Whisper in Greenwood Lake, but it's hairy to back out of there. I'd look and see if anyone's coming, and then I'd jump in my car and pull out real quick because you're backing out and you can hardly see anything as you're doing it.
I've gone to this location when it was a restaurant on a number of occasions, and it can be problematic for that exact reason. I don't love the idea of continuing to back up these spaces closer and closer to the edge of West Monbassia if we don't absolutely have to. I think having as much backup room that you can get a little bit behind the car to see out to the edges is preferable.
Yeah, I mean,
So then that would,
space like
so
that.
that would then favor the railing.
No, I was thinking it would favor maybe the wheel stops or just, I mean, this guy's had nothing at all, and I haven't heard of a lot of accidents there. I'd hate for someone with the railing and now it's short in space to back up, starts backing into people on that road or something like that.
Yeah, but I think because of having the wheel stops having to have a certain amount of space between the wall and the wheel stops, we're pushing it back, whereas we wouldn't have to push it back if the railing's there, right?
Well, you're presuming that you want to use the space between the wheel stops and the building as the access route.
Mhm.
Other than the handicapped access, which has to provide that proper route, there's nothing that means you couldn't get out of your car and walk along the back of the cars till you get to the door and then walk in. So there's really not an obligation to create that full-width walkway because it's pavement right to effectively the front of the building now. So I agree that it makes sense to avoid pushing the cars back toward Monbassia. It's a non-complying situation now. The county would never approve parking spaces that back out into a county road. So this is not the ideal situation now, and avoiding making it worse is probably a good thing.
So do we still want wheel stops and just putting them closer to the building then?
The wheel stops only serve if you avoid the use of the strip between the front of the car and the building as a walkway and presume that that isn't needed. And really, it isn't provided now from what I'm saying.
Without the wheel stops, effectively, the building becomes
The building
stop.
becomes the
Wheel
So
stop.
then it becomes a matter, does the owner want to avoid having the building hit by a car by putting in the rail, maybe 18 inches off the face of the building, the decorative rail, and just use that to protect the building, and not try to create a walkway along the front of the building?
Well, I just mentioned the rail because I thought that was a good way to really enforce that, and I was picking up on Mark's comment about, protection of those spaces, and so you wouldn't have to shift it down. And when I suggested that you put in a break in the rail near the number 3, I was thinking, one, that would give people who want to walk close to the building an opportunity to do that, but I was also thinking what Mark
Yeah.
said, other people may choose to either walk behind the cars or step over the rail, and so that's
Yeah.
what I had in mind, but I'm...
Yeah, but walking
totally-
behind
I think the
cars,
rail
why
is
do
a good
the-
solution
yeah,
on the separation of the parking spaces. And I think the rail's a good solution to protect the building. So maybe you need to talk to your client and see if they want to use that to protect the building, to separate the 90-degree conflict between the 3 spaces and the front spaces. And then the only place you got to worry about providing it proper access is the handicap space. The rest of the spaces really can walk in the back, and effectively, you could ask Ben for a waiver on the sign for the no parking anytime, and have him, and I'm sure that he would consider it, stripe no parking in the cross-hatched access aisle as painted striping, or painted signage as it may be, and just have the handicap sign on the wall, and the access aisle right in front of the door with no sign. Just paint no parking on the crosshatch blue. I had that in the Village of Chester with the code enforcement officer, and it was fine with him. So that's an option.
I don't want to put the wood railing a few feet outside the door, and then everyone's cars are backed up closer to the road, and then everyone has to walk behind the cars and right along Monbassia to get into the establishment. So that's
I mean, my first inclination would be to direct the pedestrians closer to the building, to walk into the building as opposed to out behind the cars and closer to West
Jeff,
Monbassia.
when you were there, were the cars basically pulling up to the building?
Yes.
So everybody-
Similar to what you're seeing here, there were no wheel stops. As I remember, there was no...
So historically, people didn't walk along the front of the cars, they walked along the back?
Walked along the back of the cars, or, and then in between a couple of cars to get into the...
But if you walk behind the
You can
back of
see
the
the
cars, you want to
striping.
get the cars right up
Yeah.
against the building and not, I guess, have them
Right, the
further
existing
out.
striping, you see, runs pretty close, but people used to nose right up to the building.
Yeah.
You
so
couldn't
there-
really walk between the cars and the,
So there is,
the building in the past.
so there really is not a walkway there now. And if we try to create one, we're pushing the cars out toward Monbassia.
Yeah, I'm not so sure we want to just,
So let's,
Do that.
let's just leave it the way it is then. To have the cars park up to the building.
Is there a height on the wheel stops?
The only issue I see with that is where you get into the 90-degree conflict. The reason almost why the wheel stops are where they are is to stop cars that are in the 3 spaces to the north from encroaching on that first space that's along the side of the building. So that's what created this pavement area in the front in your diagram here. If you were able to put in a few more feet of pavement on that north side and push those 3 spaces over, then you would have one line of cars all along.
Correct.
I mean, the parking spaces didn't go up. They weren't supposed to go up to the building, the way that it's drawn, or the way they were painted. There was a little space between.
there was a
the-
little space, but
Yeah.
That's the way they were drawn. Yep.
It might not have been how they.
But that's not the way that it worked.
Were there spots
Generally speaking.
Yeah.
along Lakeview Drive?
It doesn't look that way. It looks like it was just a road that came this way.
Yeah.
So these couple spots are new, I guess, and I don't know. If there were 2 instead of 3, would that make a big difference to this, or is there a...
Maybe the answer is to not have 3 spaces on that northerly side parking and make it 2. Because they're required to have 12 spaces and you've got 13. So you could lose one, have the proper spacing and comply with the code and not have the conflict.
Or you can, or like you said initially, you can push the pavement down a little further. If you need the spaces for the number of employees that are going to be on site, and maybe use those side spaces for employee parking, and then your customer parking is along the front. I don't know if that was the thought process, but
Would if they were able
people
to...
normally have to drive to get to work in this area.
If they saved on getting the railing or the parking things and were able to park up by the building but lost that one spot there, is that
They would have met.
desirable? Or-
They would have met the parking requirement, except now that they have to put the handicap space in, that's taking up one of what would have been a parking space. Otherwise, they could have continued to put the 12 there. What if they put could they put the handicap space on the side of the building?
Not without a walkway.
Then they have
The
to have
access
that
aisle
way
has to-
still.
Yeah, you're right, to walk
You
away.
really shouldn't have the access aisle going out around the back of all the cars. Ideally, the access aisle, if Ben allows it, could be in front of the door, which allows almost a delivery access aisle, which is kind of shared. Have the no parking in the striping, and then have the handicap to the side with the sign on the building.
If you did the handicap on the side of the building, let's say you did keep the walkway, then you'd only have 1 space there. You could put 2 additional spaces along the whole row of parking spaces. And that handicap parking space, there would be plenty of room to put it in there and not worry about having 3 spaces where someone might knock into it.
But then you have to make sure that let's assume that the cross-hatched access aisle is where the numeral 3 is. Then you have to make sure that there's an accessible route all the way along the front of the building to the door. That's proper width, which means you're back to putting in either wheel stops or some type of barrier. If it's wheel stops, you gotta move them back further because you got the 18-inch overhang.
Why were the wheel stops
What is, for handicap, what is the,
8 feet?
no, along the front,
Well,
along with
36 to 44 inches.
36 to 44?
Would be your access aisle.
Why did you add the wheel stops?
It was a comment from the last planning
From
board.
the planning board?
Yeah.
I wasn't here.
All right, so where are we on this?
I like Mark's suggestion of shifting the way the handicapped is, having that access aisle be for the handicap space and the main access aisle, and doing the parking as close to the building as possible to allow as much space behind the cars for people to walk safely and for people to back out safely. It's the best bet in that existing space.
It's not the ideal design, but we gotta remember, the road's already there and the building's already there.
It's what we got.
And the parking's already there,
Right.
so.
So we're still doing wheel stops, though?
I think even
I
the
don't think
wheel
it's-
stops.
Or are we
I
doing
think
railings?
They just keep
Even if
pushing you
it's up to the
back.
front.
It all depends if they want to have something protect the face of the building. They don't have something there now.
So then they're only going to stripe it. I just want to know what we're going to do if we're bringing it all the way front. Are we striping there then?
I guess
Right now, the stripe, there's nothing that,
They have striping now.
there's
Although it's-
striping that
it's-
just provides the spacing of
Right.
it. But there's nothing that keeps
It doesn't keep
Oh,
them.
cars
you go-
from pulling up to the face of the building, which is
I
what
think
Jeff
it-
said is how it's been.
Yeah, but people are able to not crash into buildings just because they see it. I think
We
more
hope.
easily than.
Remember, they're drinking beer here.
Well, they're also
But
backing
then
out
again,
on the road.
they're
That's the-
probably not,
to get to your
that's
striping.
when they're
though,
leaving, not when they're coming in.
If you're striping the front and you're striping those two spots north of the building, did you want to put cross hatching in the spot that has a 3 with a circle around it, just so because if somebody parked there going up and down, then 3 people park coming off of West Monbassia, that guy's going to come back to his car and not be able to get into it. That's why I would cross hatch it, just because if somebody, do you understand the
Or at least the passenger won't get in.
yeah, okay. Oh, you're right. Yes, it would be the passenger that wouldn't get in. So, I don't know. I don't know if it matters that much to anybody, but it's...
It's more a matter, I'm not as worried about passenger getting in and out as I've had this configuration where it created multiple cases of cars getting hit because there's not an obstruction between someone's side of their car and three space bumpers. So it created a
So we want no one to park in that spot with the
fender bender
3
or
on.
sidecar frequent problem.
Yeah, so you want nobody to park where that
Three
spot
is.
is with the 3.
Or provide a barrier, as we talked about,
Yeah.
something
Maybe
to
just
separate
put
them.
the fence right there.
Or just put cross hatching on the pavement to
Maybe,
show that
yeah,
that's
maybe
not a
just put,
parkable spot.
Put a
something
guardrail
that's
for those 3
guard-
spots.
right.
3 or 4 space wide rail.
Once you get past where the extended fence is with the sign, just to prevent that, to protect those cars parked on the north side.
Okay.
Is there a preference what you'd have, whether you'd have cross hatching in that spot 3 or a railing there between those 3 cars parking at it and that guy?
I
Or?
mean, if you think about it, it's going to be a 20-foot long rail that's going to be standing independent,
Of the both.
unattached to anything. It's going to fall over.
You'd probably go
Okay.
30 because you got 3 spaces and you'd want to leave a little bit of overhang.
Well, we're going to, all right, so 30, so it'll be 5 posts. Put them every 6 feet. I mean, I wouldn't introduce a 3-dimensional obstruction in that parking. I would stripe it at that point. I mean, why have an element just standing out there in the middle of nowhere,
Can we
unattached to anything?
can we agree that we're not leaving a pedestrian aisle? Is that
Yeah.
where we are?
I think so.
I think so.
Okay, and can we go one step further? If we're not leaving a pedestrian aisle...
We're not
I
leaving
got-
one.
I got a bunch of notes here. Where is the ADA parking going to be located?
If we're not leaving a pedestrian aisle.
I think you were going to have the access aisle crosshatched blue striping on center line of the door
Okay, okay, good.
with, and again, this is subject to Ben's write-off, I can reach out to him, having no parking in that crosshatched striping, and then have the handicap space with the sign on the wall.
Okay.
And I don't know the face of this building, so I'm presuming that if you go 8 feet over from the center line of the door, there's a place to mount the sign.
Well, the front elevation's on the next.
Yeah, there's no windows obstructing it.
All right,
The
so-
windows are separated away from the front door.
So it'd be to the left of the door would be the sign. So that's a slight shift, I think, in the parking, but that's not a big deal. I'll reach out to Ben tomorrow on the alternate delineation of the no parking for the access aisle. I'll text him.
Friday's,
That's right, Friday.
town
day
hall is
off.
closed.
All right.
And I don't know if we were okay with this. I was the only one saying it, I guess. But are we are okay with putting just hatching on the spot with a 3 on it and not requiring a barrier over there? I think the barrier might just get covered with snow and knocked over in the first
Oh,
winter
yeah,
anyway.
I'm thoroughly convinced the barrier will be knocked over.
Yeah. That,
What kind
I
of,
don't know.
where does that leave us?
So a 3-foot wide striped,
Well, I don't know if I said 3 feet. Just,
Well,
yeah, 3 feet sounds
yeah,
reasonable.
so you can
but
open
yeah.
the door and walk.
Yeah, I don't
Absolutely.
know. So, yeah, something there to so these guys know not to pull up right up against that guy.
If you make that 3 or 4 foot wide, you could shift your 2 remaining spaces over to match it.
Yes.
May I ask a separate question? Can you just review for us again what the nature of the operation is going to be for foreign objects? And I'm going to tell you, I want to tell you why I'm asking is because I'm starting to hear noise about foreign objects on social media, and I have a feeling that what people are thinking there's going to be or talking about what there's going to be is not what we discussed in our initial meeting. And I'm not saying that what we discussed was wrong. I just want to be clear on what activities are going to be going on here and what won't be.
I haven't heard anything different. I mean, the clients are telling me the same thing. They want to open up this place for people to sample beers, buy what they want, and take it away and take it home.
It's not an establishment to hang out in and drink. It's not like a pub. It doesn't have any kind of restaurant environment. It's essentially a beer store where you're going to have the opportunity to do tastings.
Correct.
That was my understanding.
Just like
but
wine tasting, it would be beer tasting.
people seem to be
Understand,
thinking
though,
it's going to be
the classification in the zoning that you're considering, you don't consider particular users, and correct me if I'm wrong, you approve uses. The existing use is a restaurant tavern. Ben has determined that what they're proposing, even if they limit it to how they want, this applicant would want to operate,
fits within.
doesn't restrict the approval. The approval is a restaurant and tavern, continuation of the same use. So they
I'm just
could.
trying to clarify what the business owners are intending.
Understood,
to do,
but I'm just trying to point home that you don't approve specific users.
I get
You're
that.
approving the use, which may in fact could be developed into something more than what they're initially intending.
It gets kind of more to if we decide to go ahead with a public hearing on this and people are thinking it's one thing and it's really not that thing, then
I get what you're saying, but I think what Mark's saying too is, I mean, even in the picture from Google, there's a grand opening of the last business there. So I'm sure Foreign Objects is going to be a wild success. But in case it wasn't, the building would still be there with this same design, and somebody else could be serving pastas and wines, and the next door pretzels and whatever, or anything.
The
that
other
fits that.
micro brew business that I recently was involved in a site plan review turned into where they in fact became successful and wanted to have a bit of food served, have some tables where people come in, enjoy themselves, try the microbrew and have something to eat. And that falls under the restaurant and tavern definition of what you're considering.
Okay,
But would the review of
that's a
the
much
parking
happier story.
spaces, would the use change? So you'd have to review the parking spaces for that?
Can I
Well,
answer that question?
I don't think so.
Yeah. If it morphs into a restaurant type establishment, according to the building code, that would change the use to an assembly use. So in an assembly use, that would restrict the requirements of the building. So they would be subject to a new building department review to upgrade it. And I think that would also affect the parking.
Well, it would, because it would be the reverse approach. Normally, you review a plan and say, how many seats do you have? So how many parking space do you need? Here, you've got 12 parking spaces, and Ben would say, you're allowed to have so many seats,
3 tables.
you know?
What is the
So it's
majority?
36.
What is the majority of what they're doing here? What is most of the space being used for?
Beer tasting, quite honestly.
They're going to be selling.
It's open space.
They're going to be selling beer.
Yes.
And So what's really accessory, the tasting or the sale of the beer?
Well, it's a retail use. The sale of the beer would be primary.
Yeah, because
But the
I don't think this is a
accessory-
restaurant.
The tasting would be accessory.
Is it like, at all like
I-
the Rushing Duck? Have you ever been to
The what?
Rushing Duck in Chester, if anyone's ever...
No.
They serve a little, if this helps, yeah, little 4 1-ounce beers or
Yeah.
something like that, and little shot glasses on a little wooden ballot. And
I mean,
you
yeah.
buy the 4, and then there's stuff you can buy and take home.
I mean, I've been to like breweries where they have a tavern area, you can do the tastings there, and they sell their beer. So this sounds, and there's no food. So it's really just beer tasting and the sale of, in this case, it's gonna be other kinds of, is it their own beer or is it a variety of beer? I mean, is it,
Their own and a variety. Their
so
own-
they're
they
making
have a
their own?
Correct.
They have a brewery, okay. So, because I want to be clear on what we're approving, because we're talking about maybe later on, they could offer food, and yet,
Yeah,
we're
right
not
now-
approving that. So we're really not approving a restaurant, because there's no food.
Correct. There's no food prep. Our application to the Department of Health there was none because there's no food prep. And the liquor license is only for the serving of alcohol.
Okay.
And also, in the building permit plans, we classified this as a retail use.
So,
I think bags of chips are thinking is
So,
what they have at the other place.
from what David's saying, this is, and it's because we talked about later on, then we want to add food service, but then they can't be a restaurant if they're not offering food service now. And David is saying the occupancy or how it's being designed is really as a retail use, which I'm pretty sure is allowed here. So I'm concerned because Ben is looking at it in one way, but its actual operation is
Ben's
different.
determination was, if you can walk in there and sample beer
Without food.
without food, it's still a restaurant tavern. If you, and you can walk into any restaurant tavern, at least that I've ever visited, and you can say, I'd like to buy a 6-pack of beer. You can buy it in a bar. You don't pay necessarily the same price you may pay at a retail store, but you can buy to take out.
But this is primarily, they're going to have beer. They're going to be stacking beer, they're going to have beer around, and it's the sale of beer.
Yes.
So,
Your code enforcement officer has told you, as the code enforcement officer of the town, that if they're having sampling and they can sell product, it is a restaurant tavern. If they decide to limit what they are operating as under that use in your code, that doesn't make it less than a restaurant tavern. So if foreign objects left a week after you had approval and another restaurant tavern came in, it would be a continuation of the same use. They would not have to return to this board because they're proposing no site changes. The board approves uses, they don't approve users.
no, I understand that, but, so I'm just saying this appears to be more of a retail use than a restaurant use, but you're saying the code enforcement officer has called it a restaurant.
He's determined it's a restaurant or tavern, that's the use, restaurant or tavern.
The minute they taste beverages, it is no longer retail.
Okay.
You can't go into Cumberland Farms and go to the cooler and start drinking beer.
But so
You're
when
not
we,
supposed to, at
when we go to approve
Get a
this,
Slurpee.
are we approving it? And the reason I'm asking is, if they do change this to a restaurant, would we normally review it or not?
No, because right now,
Drink it at
if
Cumberland.
all the proposed field changes, as far as the site plan, were removed from the plan, they could go to Ben and say, we want a continuation of the same use, change occupancy.
Okay.
And there's no site plan approval required for that.
Okay, because I thought someone earlier had said that if they suddenly wanted to offer food, they might have to come back. But if it's a restaurant, then no, they don't have to come back.
That's the current use. The only reason they're in front of this board is because they want to make site changes.
Okay. All right.
I think David was referring to the building code parking assembly requirements or something, talking about if it was a restaurant, trying to go back to Ben, is that?
Yes.
So that would be something not,
Not building permit related, not planning board
No, that
related.
would be, if it became a restaurant? If it became a restaurant?
See, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
If it became a restaurant.
If it became a restaurant, it would go to the building department. The building department would request updated or upgraded architectural plans.
Okay. But But we're saying this is fitting in the restaurant use, so
So I think this would actually be in a tavern use, not
maybe we call it tavern. I'm actually thinking ahead to what this resolution's going to say.
it's restaurant or tavern, and they each have their own definition, so.
Okay. So we could call it a tavern as what we're approving.
I'll have to see what Ben actually determined, and
Okay.
whether that's
Okay.
consistent with him.
Okay.
Okay. NB, use number 3 is restaurant or tavern.
Right.
And Ben is saying that currently it's a restaurant and tavern. And he is saying that is a continuation of the same use, restaurant and tavern. So if the applicant decides to say, fine, we're just going to have a tavern, we're still going to meet the liquor law requirements for whatever they need to serve as snacks, Ben is not saying that this user's choice to limit their operation changes the record use of that property, which is restaurant and tavern.
Okay.
So it'll be whatever the use is currently, I guess if it's restaurant and not restaurant or. I don't know if there's a prior approval for this, but to see how they classified it.
Okay.
Just be maintaining however it was.
Okay.
His comment was it's a continuation of the prior use.
Okay. That's his determination. Just the facade, can we go real quick through the facade? So, is it stone that's around, it's hard to see from the Google, image there, but that's like stone around the door?
Front door, yes.
So that's staying, and then you're saying new awnings are gonna be like those box red awnings, same thing? Or they're gonna be different?
Similar.
Similar? Do they know what color, or?
No, but you asked for a sample of the awning, so I can bring that to the next.
Yeah, maybe the color and the, are they gonna paint the building, or it's gonna stay the same kind of pinkish?
Well, no, I'm sure after the stucco's been repaired, they're gonna have to paint the
Paint
whole
over it?
surface. Yeah,
Okay, so if they could just let us know what they're gonna color it,
sure.
the colors? The existing light, that's shown, that's gonna remain, is that like a floodlight, or that's a downlight, or do you know what kind of light that is?
It's a small floodlight.
Like a small floodlight, but it's aimed downward?
Yes.
Okay. There's like a little box in the, all the way to the rightmost window. There's a box that's shown in that little stucco area at the base of it. What's that?
It was like a mailbox kind of.
Oh, that's all it is? And you said that you would let us know about the wood and the, it's gonna probably be cedar and stained.
I have that. We'll bring that in.
And then the base, are there like stone blocks at the base? That's just, is
Belgian
that?
block,
That's
yes.
Belgian block? Is that just, that's a pattern around it, or that's not the base of the building? It's just, there's Belgian block, like a little,
Correct.
okay. Like a little planter strip or something?
Correct.
Okay. And you're not, so they're not changing the stucco or changing the facade at all, other than to repair it and to possibly repaint it?
Correct.
Okay. Is it likely, is that garage on the property? That's next to it to the right? Looks like it's the same.
No, that's not their garage.
That's not theirs? Okay. Almost looks like it's the same stucco, but it's not. And then just in any resolutions, whatever lights are shown, that they not add lights after the fact, because for some reason, people seem to want to put those lights that are like right out, facing the road, bright white. It's no shielding, and it's just getting out of control, so.
Well, nowadays, with the LED lighting, it's become so pointed
Yeah.
and so directional. It really doesn't spread
Yeah.
like the traditional lights.
Right,
conventional lights.
but they're not pointing it down, they're often pointing it out, so. Anybody else?
Hope we're the last group to go through the facade. Considering the parking. Nothing for that? Sorry, folks.
So, I'd just like to review some information that we'll be needing or waiting for. Is the lighting note that would come to us from an email that you want put on the plans. So we'll be looking for that. The travel way for highway purposes.
The note, yep.
Okay, so
That'll come from
I
us.
should be expecting that shortly, right?
Yes.
And the research on this privacy fence, can it encroach upon the side
Right.
yard setback?
Sure, and I think that's probably something really for Ben. I don't see anything that says it can encroach in the setback, so unless there's something we could find.
Do you see, the interesting thing is he has already issued a permit for part of this work. So, and that permit included the fence. So, you know,
Well, I mean, I don't know, do we want to ask?
if
Mark will ask
there's
him.
no zoning issue, then there's no zoning issue with it, so,
Well, I think we don't know if there is, so Mark will ask.
I'm calling him out.
Something that's encroaching
Okay.
on a setback if it's not allowed.
okay.
So
And
it
then-
might depend on whether it's defined as a structure, and is a structure allowed in the required yard, it just,
There's certain things that are allowed.
right. But you don't see
not that I
fence.
saw were, and potentially an ornamental feature.
Okay,
I was gonna say that, but.
okay. Did we agree,
Cooler as well. Is that gonna be moved a little, or it's just that little corner?
Yeah, we'll move the cooler, that's not, just for consistency's sake, that's not an issue.
and you're
I mean,
not,
the privacy fence, so the screen it's dimensioned accordingly, it's proportional to the sign. I hate to decrease the length of it.
and you're not taking down any trees?
No,
Okay.
No.
So could we just put a note, no trees to be removed?
sure.
We did, I don't think we finalized the decision whether there was going to be a public hearing or not. So Anthony suggested it would be
A good idea.
a good idea. I think it's a good idea. I think, Jason, you said yes?
For the sake of transparency, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? What,
I have no objection
I
to
have
it.
no
I'm not,
objection, yeah.
I don't feel that it's
necessary?
absolutely, necessary, but I have no problem with it either.
Okay.
I'm right in the middle of the road.
I don't feel strongly about it either.
Okay. Lisa, do you feel that we should have a hearing?
I'm okay with the public hearing. It's in the middle of, I mean, it's the same use anyway, but it is in the middle of, looks like a lot of homes, and there could be people who might want to come and say something.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Okay.
So we'll endeavor to put you on the regular meeting. We'll have a public hearing, provided the information is submitted.
So you'll need to set the public hearing. I don't know, you want to set that for your next regular meeting, or when you're gonna get submission in, or?
I think you're going to get the submission. Can we just condition it upon getting the submission within a timely
Well,
manner?
Your regular meeting is this coming Tuesday.
No, not this one, the next one.
August.
It would be August. And then we can still act on
That's even further
the,
than the workshop. So
So
you're
we
going to
can't
put us
have-
on the August
Aug-
formal meeting
yes,
as a public hearing or to review the plans?
as a public hearing and to review the plans.
All right.
And we don't, do we have to do seeker, or we don't have to do seeker, because this is
We
reuse?
have reuse of it.
Okay, so there's no seeker. It's just public hearing, and then maybe we could start looking into drafting a resolution.
And the referral to the county is going to be, I guess, whatever the use submissions.
I thought that Noreen was sending something already, right?
You know, I
Yeah.
thought it went out to 239 referrals, according to what I have on my notes.
We'll find out.
Yeah, if it
because may
hasn't gone
have
out,
to.
send the new plan.
Then
If
it
it's
has
already
to.
gone out, at least the use is clear.
Right,
So if it hasn't gone out, why don't we revise the plans?
right.
Right.
All right, so I'll do an early submission. I'm not going to wait for the submission date. Would it be possible then? to do-
Early's always better.
Well,
So Noreen's,
we'll move heaven and earth to get this, to you as quick as possible.
Noreen's back on Monday,
Okay.
the 15th, so the sooner you get it in, then the sooner she can send it out, if it hasn't been sent out. So first thing on Monday, we should check if she sent it. Actually, I could probably reach out myself to county planning and see if they got anything. Maybe I'll do that tomorrow.
Okay.
Anything else? Anybody?
So do we need
Just a
to
motion to set the
do a
public
motion for the hearing?
So I make a motion that we set a public hearing for foreign objects for our August regular meeting, which is
August 20th.
August 20th.
Yep.
May I have a second?
Does the GML have anything bearing on the, a public hearing?
We can open the public hearing.
Okay, I second it.
Anthony, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. I have to check, just in case.
laughing at David.
Oh.
You want to write down?
I
that
object.
Anthony-
No, you objected? Sorry.
Want to put down that Anthony seconded it for Noreen?
Yes.
Did you change the certificate of mailings, or is it still registered return receipt?
You were 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 now.
What was the question again?
Yeah.
We have to check with Noreen. I don't know what the process is.
Oh, no, I know what it is. I was wondering if the board approved going with certificate of mailings as proof of mailing rather than return receipt, registered return receipt.
Code. I don't think the board can change the code.
Oh.
Those
Okay,
are
I
answers.
was from a previous
Everybody's saying.
Yeah, okay. That's fine.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you.
evening.
All right,
too.
have a good night.
All right. Where's Patch? Are we gonna try and get through these minutes? I think we
Oh,
have
2 minutes, that's right.
to. All right, folks, we have minutes left. I don't necessarily want to hold you all up. We have minutes to approve. Is there anything we need to cover this meeting? We're good? Okay. Well, you can stick around if you want to, Ashley, that's fine. I didn't want you to have to stick around. All right, so let's start with the November 13th. Do we even have them here? Oh, so Noreen gave me March 19th meetings minutes. Do you all have that? Did you receive it?
March 19th or 14th?
I
I
have
have
14.
14.
I have March 19th that she handed out to me.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I missed
See?
14 too.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, Mark, thank you.
Here, do you want to pass these down?
Wow, I have the wrong paper. Or a different paper.
Here, why don't you pass those down? Those are March 19th.
Man, you have a lot of these things. Why are
yeah.
you so far behind?
What minutes do you have?
Yeah, 2 sets of 14.
March 14th.
We all do.
Should
No,
we
I don't
start
have
with
that. I have March
14 now?
19th. All right, does everybody have the March
That works.
14th meeting minutes?
Yes.
All right. Could I have someone make a motion to approve the March 14th minutes?
I'll make the
And
motion.
that's where we're starting?
Yeah, the 14th, I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of March 14th.
Okay, can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any revisions, anything, corrections? None? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that carries, so March 14th is approved. And actually, on our agenda, she did not include, oh, yes, she did. The revised agenda has March 19th.
Anything else?
We're good.
Okay.
So just make a motion to
Thank you.
close, right? Okay. All right. This is the March 19 minutes. We could carry this over to next week if people haven't looked at it, unless you want to do that this evening. You want to
Say we
approve?
take 2 minutes and take a look at it?
Yeah, then we don't have to, because there are other minutes that have not been approved.
Me too.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the March 19th minutes as amended. May I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bonnie, Anthony. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, so those are approved, so at least we got 2 done. Is that all that everybody has? Those 2 sets of minutes?
What else was on
Yeah.
the agenda?
I have a bunch from November.
Yeah, I do too.
Do you have them with you? I don't have mine with me.
I just have my one copy. That
Yeah, I have November 13th, December 13th,
December 18th.
December 18th. You got all this?
All right, so we'll carry those over to our Tuesday meeting. And just everybody remember to bring the minutes, because if you only 2 have them, then
Yeah.
we can't act on it.
Want me to, I'll jot down the dates, I guess. Which ones,
It's it's on the, agenda November 13th, 2018, December
It's on
13th,
the agenda.
2018,
Okay.
and December 18. All right,
Wait, it's on, you mean July 11 as well?
that's today.
Oh, never mind.
That's adjournment. So, anybody have anything to say? Anything to bring up? Good?
Good.
All right. I make a motion to adjourn the meeting. May I have a second?
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?